Oh, let me guess, I'm not coming through.
No, none of us were coming through.
You spack.
I had it on. I had it on. Oh, muted. There we go. But yeah, I'm just in the mood for a chat. It's Wednesday. I'm in the mood for a chat. I'm awake now. Finally, I've had a day off. I can't believe I've actually had a day off. And the lady who I'm working for today had a bit of a migraine, so I was able to come home, and I've had the day off, which is good. And yeah, I'm just chatty, happy. I've got energy, I'm ready to do this. I was on Nathan's earlier. So were you. How did it go later on? Because I stepped out.
I heard you snoring. Did you fall asleep out at the computer?
It wasn't me.
Oh, were you eating? I wasn't quite sure if it was snoring or eating.
Do I sound like? When I eat? Does it sound like I'm snoring? Health
You just sound like a pig. It's difficult to tell whether you're a pig in shit, snoring, or eating. It could be any.
That's super cheeky. You need a slap for that. Mind you can say the same.
So you just told me then, whilst you were on mute, right? But they didn't hear it because you were on mute. That you've just had Mark Sargent on, right?
I did. Do
you know what? I've been in the community for about 3 years now, in October-ish. And in that time, I've not had a single comment on any of my videos from Mark fucking Sargent. I'm sure he's avoiding me.
Mark Sargent was really cool, though. I mean, I was talking to him, and it's the first time I've actually talked to Mark. I mean, to be fair, I mean, you know, you've got to look at it from Mark's point of view as well. I mean, we are relative newcomers, even if we're known in this small
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. 3 years, I've not had a single comment off him.
Maybe you just need to get in touch with him. That's what I did. I asked Mark if he fancied...
Do you know what? I've tried. I've messaged him and he ignored... Well, I don't know if he ignores me, but he doesn't respond to me, so I'm thinking that he gets that much messages that he just doesn't see me. I'm whinging. Mark, you're horrible to me, Mark Sargent. You're such a shill.
But yeah, please, Mark, come on to my show.
It's shocking, Mark. I've been on here longer and Ranty's got you on the show. It's just not acceptable.
Should we add Adam Meek into the call?
No.
Oh yeah, let's see if he's available. Wouldn't mind talking to Adam actually. I'll add him and see what's what. See if he wants to join.
Okay then.
He might not, because I know he's out having a meal. So it's possible that he's probably still eating. But you never know. He might be home and might want to have a little talk with us. Apparently I'm Ranty the Rustler.
Oh, here he is. Shh.
Shh. Silence.
Did it work, right?
How? What?
Did it work? Yeah. I've only just got in and the phone's rang. So, what are you doing? You're not watching Liverpool?
I'm not watching Liverpool. No, are they playing right now, are they? Oh, they're playing in the what's it called? The World Club Cup.
Yeah, Super Cup final. 1-1 extra time it's going to. Just
no. Do you know what channel's it on? I'll stick it on now.
BT Sports.
BT Sports 1?
Yeah.
Right, I'm getting it on. I've been playing Command and Conquer. Priorities.
Are you still playing that? I mean, you were playing that a year ago.
I know. I love this one particular level because I want to try and get the perfect level where I get like minimal amounts of losses, and I kick their ass. But it's so difficult because they're learning what my tactic is, and they adapt, and it's like evolution, but there's more evidence for it because they actually adapt into my style. It's really annoying.
Hey, right the hand. Nice to have you. I've just taken you off of block because I noticed that you'd been hidden. Karen B hid you, so I've unblocked you anyway.
Boo!
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, what was that?
All the rest I'm happy to block.
Right the hand. I need to give you my 2 pence worth on your discussion with Brenda.
Okay, yeah.
I've heard everyone giving like Ranty a hard time because he failed to moderate you, and I've heard people on the ball, obviously on the Ball Earth side, and I've heard them criticising you for basically being disgusting and all these bad words. And do you know what? I actually disagree with them completely because that was your best performance that I've seen you do. because you got her in a circular reasoning argument. She would not accept it. You asked her 2 or 3 times. She still wouldn't accept it. She applied her process of deny, deny, deny. And basically, you got pissed off. And I can understand you getting pissed off because she just won't accept that she might be wrong. And if she had have accepted that she was caught in a circular reasoning argument, that whole situation would not have happened.
I agree. And that's why like, look, you can, call me whatever you want to call me, but, I was in sales for a long time, so I know how to deal with people, and I know when somebody's screaming for an out. And that's what he was doing. He was screaming for an out, so I presented it, knowing that it would happen, and let it happen. So
I agree.
Because there wasn't going to be any more progress. There was going to be no more progress made in the conversation.
I agree. So, I think that you were wrong to call, because the facts were you had her in a circular reasoning argument. She was applying deny, deny, deny at all costs. You got pissed off and referenced her in the masculine first. Then she told you to fuck off. Then you referred to her as it. But actually, I could argue legitimately that the conversation was the reference to it, because it became triggered being the conversation, not necessarily her. But then she went batshit crazy. But the reason why it all started was because Brenda refuses to accept that she might have been caught in a circular reasoning argument. Right the hand won. You don't have to accept it, but that is the way it happened.
That's how I see it too, man. So
kudos again, from me, mate. You did good there, mate.
Yeah, I think I kept my cool better than the opponent, and regardless of whether you agree with anything, I showed more composure than I have in the past, and I've showed more composure than the opponent. So you got to give it up a little bit.
You won the debate, and you also did your best performance in disagreeing with somebody, and that is progress. It might not have been absolutely perfect. None of us are perfect, but you are way better than what you have been in the past. I praise you for it, mate. I think you did good. I'm not saying that you were perfect. I'm not saying you were right to reference her in the masculine or the it. But what I'm saying is that she kind of half caused it herself by refusing to admit that she might be caught in a circular reasoning argument. And if you are caught in one, just admit it, because we all get caught out periodically, but she won't. It's her own fault.
Yeah, no, it's telling, because the same thing happened with Rumpus when I asked him for the shape of space-time. He couldn't do anything with that question either, because at the end of the day, space-time is a concept, and any way they try and define it, it has no physical shape, it has no matter, so it becomes nothing, and then nothing can't influence something, and that's the end of it.
I agree. By the way, the extra time for Liverpool, there's a penalty right now, right? Is that right?
You're 2-1 at what?
It's 2-1 up, but I think there's a penalty that she's doing a video screen looking at a penalty. I'm just making sure that I'm not too far behind.
Yeah, no, you're on.
Hey. Well, what did you think, Mr. Meakin? Did you think right the hand was reasonable, unreasonable, winning, losing, knob?
I wonder what this phone call was about, Ollie.
I thought Right the Hand's best performance today was demonstrated against Brenda. He got her triggered and he managed to win the victory, even though she won't accept it. Just accept that she might be caught in a circular reasoning argument, and none of that would have happened.
Who's rustling?
Oh, that's me with crisps.
You talk about me eating.
Oh.
Yeah, you got a penalty against you, mate.
Yeah, I know. I'm watching the penalty now. They're about to take it for me. I'm on 99 minutes, almost 100 minutes. Let's see if the goal goes in. They're lining up for it.
Well, I think...
Oh, yeah, he's tapped it in. The winning. It's 2-2 now. He's tapped it in.
Well, I think Right the Hand is asking some good questions. I think some of his videos are very thought-provoking. So I wouldn't say that was his best performance. I think people should go over and have a look at some of the work he's doing on his channel.
It's his best performance.
And also,
to date from
not
I've
to
seen.
call Karen B a tranny, because I don't personally think she's a tranny. I think she's all woman.
Are you serious, Right the Hand? Do you think she's a tranny?
Bro, I got a screenshot of an Adam's apple. I mean, look, you want evidence? Go look. Like it was
There's
like
no
an 11...
way she's a tranny. We're not going to do the Patricia thing with Karen B. Come on, pack it in.
No.
Bro, here's the thing. I'm just going to say one thing. I'm not going to say anything in any specifics. I'm just going to say If it's the truth, we'll research it and find out. If it's a lie, we'll research it and find out. The moment you get into deflections, that's when you start. It seems like you're trying to hide something.
Right, hand. Let me ask you this: Can a tranny give biological birth to a female child?
No, of course not.
She has a female daughter.
That doesn't mean she had it.
You want to see the image? It's the image of her.
Anyway,
it's clearly
again. Here's the thing: it could be her DNA. I'm just saying. Don't. The moon looks like a floating. Yeah. Hey, man. Like, look. I didn't bring it up.
Right. Let's move on. I would. As I say, I mean, the research that Right the Hand is doing right now, in my opinion, is really cool. Have you seen any of his recent videos there, Tony?
No.
Right the Hand, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you've been finding out?
Yeah, no, I think, so there's one channel or dude I've mentioned him a couple times, Bill Gatey. I don't believe in everything he says, but he puts forth the way he phrases, and he's the one that got me onto nothing, that with no shape, and then forming it against space-time and all that. But yeah, no, he talks about the mechanism by which these things are happening. Okay, so if they're going to tell us that gravity is pulling the rock down, okay, what is the mechanism? How is it doing that? Okay, if there is no physical, if you talk about the heliocentric world in the terms of atoms bouncing around, they literally does not have a pulling force. And we know magnets can pull. We know that things can be pulled. So the entire concept doesn't explain that. So I think we need to, that's, especially my stuff with the vacuums or just watching vacuums, like vacuums do suck. I think that is what people call quote unquote negative pressure. And that's one of the lies, is that since they don't have a pulling force because it's colliding atoms, they need to create these two numbers, pressure at sea level and then absolute pressure. But it's just, you have normal pressure in the middle, and then the pulling force, which would be quote unquote vacuum, and then the pushing force, which would be higher pressure. So I think their explanation hides the actual mechanics that make things happen, because you can't have a pulling force when an atom pushing.
Yeah, I sent you a video. Before about static electricity inside a vacuum. Did you get a chance to watch that?
No, I haven't, man. I seen it, and I thought it was to the group chat at first, and I thought it was to me. So, but yeah, I haven't checked that out. But
okay, so because one of the things that was brought up today inside the Flat Earth debates was that the presentation was made by Spurs, even if it was a little bit ham-handed, about this the suction cups inside the vacuum. But we finally got to a point where the demonstration was made, and one of the rebuttals to one of the possibilities as to why those cups were still sticking to the inside of the vacuum chamber was a possibility of some static. Well, this demonstration, about putting a meter in that was able to create some static electricity, demonstrated that that a vacuum chamber won't be able to retain any static inside of it. So that kind of eliminates that as one of the causes as to why that was still sticking on.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. No, I mean, and again, there's, Nathan today talked about the mechanical aspect, but what would that be? Like, how would rubber attach itself to the glass mechanically? What would be the physical connection?
There'd only be a little bit if there was a little bit of finger grease on it, that might be able to do it, but I don't think it'd be strong enough to hold the weight of the actual suction cup itself. But I don't think it could be a mechanical thing.
Yeah, so again, if we start delving deeper, we can explain things and you can see them, but if the explanation doesn't match, then we have to either come up with a new one or throw that one out. So if you read online, everything's, again, not to trust what you read online, but everything says that it's the pressure pushing against the suction cup, and if you have a suction cup, you only have the air inside is pushing out. So once you remove the pressurized system, it should pop right off because there's only a pushing force underneath it. So there must be something else. And I think it's the pulling force that they're trying to hide.
What's your ideas on that, Tony, of a pulling force?
To be honest, I'm caught in a bit in the middle. On the one hand, I've never been satisfied with the explanation for why vacuums do not suck. I've always thought that explanation is not satisfactory because vacuums do appear to suck. And I accept what I see. On the other hand, I think that the ballers accept their explanation for why vacuums don't suck because it's convenient. They don't critically analyze it. I do apply critique to it because I don't know what the position is. And this topic is one of the ones that, because I'm 50-50 on, I have to listen. I can't really engage what I think because I don't really have a view on it. I'm open to it being either or. I don't really have a view either way. I'm open to the idea it could be one or the other, and I don't know which argument's true because I'm not satisfied that vacuums do not suck. The explanation and the evidence that they present isn't persuasive enough for me to think that's what's going on. So I'm really 50-50 on it. That's my honest position.
Well, it's relatively new, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, what we're looking into here is a whole new line of stuff that nobody's really looked into. And to be honest, I think it all started with Spurs chemo.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think that when there's something new, and let's be honest, this is radical. It's very radical. Spurs is struggling, and he accepts this. This is not a dig at Spurs. To formulate his phraseology to even get his point across. Because I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that there's a legitimate question. How do you prove these things? And you're talking about proving pressure that we can't see, can't touch, can't smell, can't taste. We're relying on gauges. Gauges can be calibrated one way or the other. And when we're getting down to the torr value, I believe there's something like 49 torrs to 1 psi. And 1 torr makes a difference. So if you're going to fractionize 1 psi into torrs and 1 torr makes a difference, how the hell are we going to even empirically measure accurately that something's got equilibrium or not? It might be the case that them things stayed on because they weren't quite at the right pressure to equalize. It might be that some other reason was holding them on. I don't know. But it's a legitimate question to ask, and I think that it should be followed through to its formula, to its conclusion, whatever that conclusion may be, because it is interesting.
Have you heard of Flattoberfest?
What?
Flat Out Faith has said, glad you started the round table. Now you can come over onto Flattoberfest. Now, I have heard there's a new debate platform out somewhere. I think it's Spurs Chemo was saying it's on a Friday. But I don't know where, I don't know what the channel is, I don't know anything about it. It's just something that I've heard.
I know they have Friday night fights on the 24/7 Discord, where it's like two teams, a baller and a baller and a flat team, and then they basically have topics that they go back and forth, and it's much more structured. You have like objections where you can stop, and they try and keep it on topic a little bit. The moderator's active, and so maybe that's what he's talking about.
I get you. So it's done on Discord, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Somebody mentioned in here that AB Science destroyed Riley. What's that about? Wolfgang said that.
He preached a lot of pseudoscience and passed it off as real science, and I called him on it. He hasn't done anything. He's just practiced the usual nonsense that the ballers present. He's just the new cat on the block.
He's been I think he just started making videos or whatnot, but yeah, you nailed it best when you said the more science in your name, the less in the video.
Yeah, that's true. Anyone that's got science in the name, you know that they're not going to be presented. I mean, look at Conspiracy Cats. I know he's not got science in his name, but you never see science from him. Look at Simon Dan, never see science from him. Bob the Science Guy, never see science from him. Blue Marble Science. He tries to do science and then misrepresents the name of his video. He did a video that was entitled Gas Pressure Without a Container, and he had a big bloody pipe going up the side of his house. If that's not a container, I don't know what is. But anybody with science in the name or claims to be doing science, apart from me, of course, is not doing science because they don't know what scientific method is.
Apart from me. So how
nobody can debunk my egg experiment.
So how did he destroy you, and how did you destroy him? Come on.
Well, he claimed that models were part of science, and he did a model. I did my egg experiment, and relative density was the subject matter, and he did a model that he claims was based on all known scientific laws and scientific theories and all that. And he was unable to prove that relative density had any credibility to it because it lacked coefficient values that made it predictable. And I'm like, oh, your model was wrong. In any event, your model's a reification fallacy and it's not science. You need to debunk the experiment I actually did to debunk the experiment I actually did. And he said, but I wasn't trying to debunk you. I was trying to prove you right. And I'm like, well, prove me right and do my experiment again and get the same results. But what he did was he used a model, reified his own model by treating it as though it was like failing to prove that I was right because it lacked coefficiency. And therefore, my model is complete and what did he call it now? He said something like, I can't remember the word he used, but basically the guy was applying a model that then failed and then pinning it on me saying that my model, my experiment doesn't prove anything because it failed his model test. And I'm like, you made the model, dickhead. All it confirms is that your model was rubbish.
So we're joined by Brian. Nice to meet you. Nice to have you back, Brian. How's it going?
Hi lads, how are you? I'll be in and out. I'll be going on mute a bit because I'll be shopping. I'm driving now and I'll be shopping, so let me know if there's any noises coming through. I'll go on mute. Okay?
Okay, yeah,
cool.
That's fine.
Thanks.
I was just going to say, who the fuck's this? But then I realised he was friendly. I thought you might be setting a trap for me, Ranty.
Why is it not? I don't understand why my channel isn't allowing links, because Karen just is trying to. Somebody was saying it before that links aren't working for some reason, so I'm going to have to look into that. Does anyone know how to allow links to work?
I think links are automatically working or not. It must be a problem with YouTube, I guess. Unless they've not got a spanner. If they've not got a spanner, they can't put links in.
Right, let's have a look. See, I'll have a look. See if I can. Block links. No, that's not it. Allowed all comments.
Karen B was asking for talking about links.
Yeah. So I had her as a moderator whilst we had Mark Sargent on, so that she could clean up the chat, which she did really well. But now that we've finished that little segment, I don't need a ban hammer. Karen's a ban hammer, as we know, and she's very good at it.
I remember when you first started and you said, ban everyone. You can't have anybody in this chat that disagrees with me. Ban them. And now you're like, don't ban everybody. I'll have no audience.
Well, no, it's not that. I am trying to try and offer an equal platform. So
no, you're not. You're just trying to grow your channel. You're so mercenary and fickle. We see straight through you, Ranty, you shill.
If I was trying to grow my channel, I would have done it however long ago, wouldn't I?
I don't know. It's just what the ballers are saying.
Is it? Have you been in there? Are you like a spy?
I always lurk. I always have someone on in the background listening, paying attention. If I hear my name, it's like the Batfink sensors go up. But sometimes I hear Ranty's name getting mentioned as well, so I listen for that as well.
Do you know, I can't find why links aren't allowed. This is going to annoy me now.
Right, who's the guy that's joined? The Irish guy, because he's feeding back.
Sorry, do you want me to go on mute?
Oh, just turn your volume down a little bit. It's coming through your mic.
Yeah, okay.
Are you driving a truck?
I'm driving a minute there, so I'll go on mute. That's what I do.
Are you driving a truck?
No, just an Audi.
Just an Audi? You got all that noise in the background?
No. You know what it is? It's because it's after switching from my phone's microphone through to the Audi, and I'm on Skype, and I can't switch it back on Skype until I stop the car and turn it off. That's what it is. I just go on. I'm only be driving for a few minutes, so I go on mute and I'll come back to you when I'm shopping.
Holy shit! I've just had a super chat from Sam Hain. $333.33. Shout out to Manny Pinocchio.
Shout out enhanced.
Enhanced and triple enhanced. Thank you. Fucking crazy.
Shout out atmospherically magnified.
This is definitely going to pay for my trip to Scotland next month. So, wow, thank you. Thank you, Sam, my #1 supporter, I trust. Wow. Just, yeah, Thank you. Right, anyway, let's get back to the chat. Think of something to talk about, guys, because I can't. I've got a blind spot at the minute.
All right, so let's not talk about gas pressure, for God's sake. Let's talk about anything else about gas. Let's think. What have I seen? I've not seen much recently.
Oh, hang on. Well, let's talk about their questions. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right, let me dig it up. So we've got their housekeeping questions. So this is the Globus housekeeping questions. Where are we? It's in there.
Definitely wanted to talk a little bit about those. They're retarded.
Yeah, they are.
There we go. So here's housekeeping questions from the Globe. Now I know that some of these aren't essentially well written, but we can sort of make out what they're trying to say through them. Brian might be the one to talk about the evidence of a lunar eclipse being possible on FE. If you're listening there, Brian, do you have any opinion on that? I guess not. Tony, you?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, Brian. So is there any
Yeah,
evidence?
I'm about to park up now, so you'll hear a bit of noise only for a moment. Yeah, it's something I'm looking into, about how it's possible. It's a tricky one. There's no point in saying it's not tricky. It's difficult. I wouldn't come forward with it, with anything, unless I was absolutely definite. You know, kind of way. Because that's basically what the globe has done. If they'll come forward saying it has to be the globe that's getting in the way, you know, they haven't even proven it's a globe or it's a planet or any of the rest of it. But yet it's in the way of the sun and the moon, or involved in this eclipse. You know, that kind of way. So it's like I don't want to do the same thing as what they did. You know, it's like whatever it is, it might be something that actually nobody knows and will ever know. You know, that kind of way. It could be one of those things. It's like there's assertions from the globe side about what it is, but we know that's not possible. But,
see, I'm not even against the idea of the sun and the moon changing positions in the relatively speaking from our perspective. Sometimes the moon goes behind the sun, sometimes the moon goes in front of the sun. I'm not against that in terms of what's going on, because the idea is the sun's always behind the moon from our perspective. Well, what if it's not? What if there's an overlap and sometimes the sun goes in front of the moon, sometimes it goes behind the moon? I mean, I'm not saying that's the cause of the lunar eclipse, but anything goes once you realise that we're not living on what they're telling us we're living on. And yeah, the lunar eclipse is a question, but I'm not even satisfied that it works on a ball model, because when I look at what they tell us is the lunar eclipse, the shadow that they tell us is caused by Earth looks like it's been caused by the menstrual cycle of a woman, because it's blood everywhere. And I'm like, that shouldn't be the way that it should be if it's really caused by the shadow of the Earth. Oh, but it's redshift, you moron. You don't understand redshift. No, but I do understand that when you have a close proximity, you get shadows. But the distances involved to the sun and between the sun and the moon are that big that there wouldn't actually be a casting of the shadow of the Earth, because the moon's too far away. But who am I to question anything?
Well, the analemma, the solar analemma, there's a lunar analemma that happens once a month, I think. It's a lunar analemma that happens, and the solar analemma happens over a year. So there will be times in the year. It depends on. I'm not an expert on the on the actual places of correspondence between the two of them, the moon and the sun in the sky. But there will be times throughout the year when it's very possible for the moon and the sun to be the moon to be in a different place. Let's just say to be in front or behind the sun. There will be, like, I mean, the globe can't even explain, not to my satisfaction anyway, how we can have a moon and a sun up in the sky at the same time. You know, how are they, like, I mean, the explanations come up with it for that are absolutely ridiculous. So it's like there's a lot, as I said, it could be one of those things that we never know, and nobody actually knows, not NASA, not anyone, might be nobody knows and will never know. So holding on to that is like, it's really just sour grapes really when it comes to us, them holding on to that. Because they can't prove it's them either. They can't prove the other version of it.
Yeah, they'll hold on to that like a beast, right? But they'll ignore completely how you can have gas pressure without a container. And
Well,
when they say gravity and we remind them that gravity is not a force, they just don't even answer it. They wait for you then to speak to then lose your own point.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with whether Hello. Sorry, lads. I know everyone up here. You're going to hear me saying hello to a few people. The thing about it is with gravity being a force and all the rest of it, it's like, I think it was on yesterday's show, Nathan had Zanuck, and he was saying, what's the meaning of the word pseudo? And Zanuck didn't know. You know, and it's like, they're throwing out this pseudo, it's a pseudo force all over the place. But,
yeah, pseudo just means fake, not real.
Yeah, pseudo is fake, because pseudo is a very close first cousin to the word usurper. You know, usurper is a similar word, although it describes more of a person than a thing. But a usurper is somebody who is not the real deal.
Yeah, it's like
pseudo
when they say
is not the real
force.
deal.
When they say it's an apparent force, or it manifests itself in our 3D world. It doesn't manifest itself. It's not a force.
Yeah, well, it's not anything. It's not real. You know, that's the problem.
Well, this is. Sorry, I was just going to say that this list of top 10 questions created by the Rumpus and Dean is essentially things that these guys are really passionate about. Wow, that's a bit loud. Wow, yeah, I've had to turn you off there. Are you at a swimming pool or something?
Me?
Yeah, it's super loud.
So I'm in a shopping centre, and it's normally quite enough, but it's very busy tonight. So I'll have to get back to you in a few minutes, maybe, because I don't want to be ruining the.
Yeah. Pop yourself on mute for a bit.
Yeah. I'll come back in. I'll come back in within the next 20 minutes. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Talk to you. Bye.
So yeah, so what I was saying is that these housekeeping questions, Tony and stuff, is like this is their top 10. So we really need to look at this as being like Nathan's housekeeping questions. You know, that this is passionate for these. They've thought about this. This is stuff that they want us to address. So they obviously think that it is impossible for a lunar eclipse to be possible on a flat Earth. That's what they think. So.
But the problem is I'm not satisfied that it's possible on a ball Earth because of the distances involved. Scale is a thing, right? It's possible if the sun and the moon are close, as they appear, but it's not possible if the sun and moon are miles away. Because if you try modelling it, you don't get a shadow when you model the moon at 238,000 miles away and the sun at 93 million miles away. There is no shadow, there's no penumbra, there's no umbra, and that's obviously on a solar eclipse. But on a lunar eclipse, the Earth's supposed to be 4 times bigger than the moon, and the only time that's possible is if the moon's really, really close to it, but it's not, it's miles away. So it's the same point, the scale works against them, and demonstrate that even on a model that you can cast a shadow from a 93 million mile away sun the light doesn't even get to you can't model it on their model. It doesn't work when you try modeling it. The light from the sun disperses before it gets to the Earth. There's no light from the sun getting to the Earth, let alone a casting of a shadow from the Earth on the moon. It's nonsense. It only works if they're very close.
So we are joined by Pete Shea.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, thanks.
Pete the Tranny.
No tranny talk tonight. Thank you very much.
Keep your balls where we can see them, right? Keep your balls where we can't see them.
Pete, what do you think about question 1 from this housekeeping thing that the Rumpus and Dean put out? Do you have an answer for that? Evidence of a lunar eclipse being possible on FE.
Yeah, of course it's possible on a flat Earth. That's all there is. The ball is fantasy. It's metaphor, right? So the truth builds the lie. When Dean, who is so patient, so altruistic, right, he'll put all of the time in. I've described Dean as one of the more insidious ones because he'll sort of pretend that he's open-minded, and should you give him persuasive arguments, he'll be on your side. But one of the things he does is asks for inputs to the model he tries to put together for flat earthers. And when I tried to add my input, which was that the moon is not a solid body, it is a reflection. Well, he hasn't incorporated that into his thinking whatsoever. And if you've seen any of the models he's done, it's always been with a solid ball moon in space. So this can't work, right? What's going on in actuality it's a different matter. What can we prove at this stage? For me, let me just tell you my thinking. All of the skylights have a singular source. This is what we sort of observe on a daily basis. As you move into sort of weekly and monthly reckonings, you get sort of a variation from everything seeming to move in one whole sort of movement, one unified motion. So as I see it, well, I'm sure you've heard me write this loads of times, the sun and the moon, one is a reflection of the other. We're dealing with reflections of this singular source, which is earthbound, against this barrier, this container that I think lots of flat earthers will agree has to exist. So that's the way I see it. Regarding evidence to convince Dean, what are you going to do there? I mean, that's not the purpose of any of this. No matter if you even prove that the likes of these characters, they'll be back with the same arguments to someone else the next time.
Do you think you could demonstrate this claim of yours about? I'm assuming this is Aristarchus, yeah. So can you demonstrate pretty clear how it would work, how the moon is a reflection?
I can prove that in a sense. When we look at the sunspots, right, it's a bit complicated. I know I have many different hangouts, and what I need to do is a series of sort of 5-minute videos putting the bones of it down there. But it's demonstrated what, in a scientific sense. I think what's important at this stage in terms of our flat Earth inquiry is building a picture for ourselves, So when it comes to the more basic questions, these are the ones that we have to first of all consider and try and incorporate it into our version of reality, which is what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? The individual seeking greater truth here. I think I could demonstrate. I could actually come up with a very good model of Earth, I think, with enough time and motivation.
So what's it a reflection of?
With Mark Sargent on earlier on, he knows about the giant trees. The one thing because I've been around this arena a long time, when the No Forest and Flat Earth video came out, there was a massive sort of emotion about it and a massive promotion about it from all of the main players, Antonio Subrat, Nathan Oakley, Patricia Steer, etc., etc. Suddenly, it sort of went off the boil. Hang on, let me just finish. It went off the boil. So this is always ever present in my mind since that day, and I've built upon it. There's only one tree, which is Aristarchus. Aristarchus is tangible now because we can see it in its reflected form from the crater on the moon. So this is where I'm coming from.
By definition, a reflection is not tangible, is it?
Well, it is tangible because you can look at it, right? You can see it. You can identify different features or marks on it that could be compared to other features elsewhere. So it is tangible.
What's the definition for tangible, Pete?
Well, okay, tangible in the sense that you have some sort of, there's some solidity to it, there's some reality to it. This is the sense that I mean it.
Tangible means perceptible by touch. So if a reflection, by definition, is tangible according to you, it can't be, can it?
Well, okay, not in that strict definition then. But it is tangible in terms of it's not just an airy-fairy idea. We can. When I mention Aristarchus, you can bring up crater Aristarchus from the moon and you can see it in all its glory. So I mean tangible in that sense, but I also mean tangible in a different sense as well, in terms of, going back to where my brain leads me, what are the greater causes behind all of that? And what are the effects of all of this? I mean, one of the things that has been killed, the fake death, is the ether. And for me, the ether is intricately connected with all of this. So that expression of the ether is tangible. This is how we get the clouds. This is how we get patterns left. Ranty, you're well accustomed to the beach. You've seen all of these wriggly lined sand patterns on the beach after the tide goes out. I hold that this is this tangible pattern being expressed, which is being reflected from above. It's my position on it.
Pete, one other question. Do stars pass in the dark side of the moon? Like, can stars be seen through the moon, or does the moon occult the stars?
That's a good question as well, man. And I'm not... Oh, it's a fucking good question now, because lately I've been thinking that the sun is the projector of the rest of the sky. So when we have the sun out in our sky, it takes up over half the sky with broad daylight. So none of the stars are visible to us at ground level. But if you went up above the atmosphere, up the higher areas above, I think what we'd see is the sun being the sort of central projector, projecting both the night and the daytime. Can stars be seen through the moon? Not really, but I say the possibility is possibly there as well, you know.
So,
but in general,
how can a reflection occult stars then?
It's a reflection of solidity. It's so I mean it depends on what
answer my
stars
question.
are.
Answer my question. How can a reflection occult stars?
Okay, when we rise up, right? Do you agree that the stars tend to disappear as we rise up beyond a certain point?
No.
You don't?
No, there's evidence that shows that the stars can be seen at 120,000 feet from amateur balloon footage. It was what's his face? He was the guy
I'm wondering. I've seen that as well. And the question I would have there, I think he said he set the camera to infinity levels, whatever it is. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'm wondering if a human was to go up at that height, would they see the stars, or is this just something that the camera is picking up based on the settings that are put into it? I still hold that no, they are light. There are observer-dependent reflections which need a medium ultimately to transmit through. That medium in general is the atmosphere, and more particularly the water.
Let me put it into this context for you. If the camera was set to infinity zoom, that would mean that it would give the Ranty the effect where his camera wouldn't be always hunting to try and get in focus. It would be fixed on infinity, and given that they tell us that the stars are infinitely far away, then you would expect them to pick up, and that's probably the reason why he's got them. So what I'm saying is there is evidence that we can see stars at 100,000 feet from...
Right.
I've seen that. What was his name?
Dwayne Kellum.
Yes. So I'm not saying that's absolutely true, but I'm saying there is evidence to support the assertion that stars can be seen.
Right. I agree, and that is evidence in itself. But there's also evidence to support that the stars do disappear beyond a certain point.
Yeah, but that could be a focal point, couldn't it? Could be a focus issue.
Right, it could be, but it could be coming back to what exactly are the stars themselves. Have you any point of view yourself on what the stars actually are?
I think the firmament. I think the stars are embedded in the firmament like crystals are embedded in a crown.
Right, that's fair enough. We'll notice that in the heart of the word Aristarchus, we have star, R-I star cus, right? Cus, if you don't know, is a shortened or diminutive, shortened version of the name Jesus in Spanish. But yeah, I mean, if you think there's some sort of solidity attached to them, that's fair enough, man. But how are you going to sort of develop upon that? How are you going to develop any greater thinking, you know?
Ask for evidence for stellar parallax.
But you won't find any, right?
Well, yeah, that's what Nobed did the other day. What was that guy's name? Jeff. He came in as was it Righteous? Ranty, what was his name?
Righteous. I have no idea what you mean.
The guy called Jeff. I was asking about stellar parallax and why Betelgeuse didn't parallax with Sirius.
I think Rumpus was going through that with you, isn't he?
His real name's Jeff, but I can't remember what name he came in on. But Ranty had him on, and I asked him why is it the case that Sirius and Betelgeuse didn't parallax together? And his answer was, well, they do, but it's just that smaller amount that we can't see them, even though the ratio is 1 to 75 or something ridiculous. So for every one smidgy dick that Betelgeuse moves, there's 75 movements from Sirius. So either Sirius is not moving relative to Betelgeuse, or we're looking at the Emperor's New Clothes. But the answer, he was debunked with that one question. There is no stellar parallax. Which means that all the stars are moving around in unison, and they can't be trillions of... One can't be 416 light years away, or whatever it is for Betelgeuse, and Sirius be 7, if there's no parallax. Either all the stars are moving around us like a dome, or a firmament, or whatever you want to call it, perspective, blockage, layer, or whatever, or... I don't know how else to interpret it, but the stars are the barrier for me. Heaven.
Well... But that's what I'm saying. Everything moves in unison. And the fact that all the stars reset on an annual basis tells me that we have a singular source to everything. The only variation will have to do with, well, again, in my thinking, the particular contour of this reflective screen. I hold that we're on in a broken system, right? Aristarchus decapitated. When it was decapitated, this is what we remember at Christmas time. We get a decapitated tree planted on an X, right, for Xmas, Christmas, and a big fuck-off star at the top representing Polaris. So the way I view it, we have at the center this emanation. Its primary reflection is Polaris. Everything revolves around, and then the primary reflection of Polaris is the sun itself, and then the sun projects the rest of the night sky, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. That's the way I see it. And yeah, it's, again, prove it. Who am I going to prove that to, right? I guess I could write loads of books and spend much time sort of piecing together everything and putting down some sort of coherent, greater picture to all of this. But who am I presenting it to? The whole arena is rigged. And I'm sure you and Ranty, I'm not going to go back on anything I have to say just because I'm talking to you now, but we'll keep it calmer. But, you know, I mean, what are you going to do? This is what I've come to the conclusion. This is the individual's journey. And it's about us, bringing things home, understanding, first of all, that we're on a flat earth and the universe is given, doesn't exist. But that's not the end of the story. Then everything will come back to us. Jesus is the Son, is within us. So it's by making these connections and piecing everything together, I think, for the individual anyway. It's not, as I said, it's not about convincing anyone. You can make strides towards understanding.
Back to the questions. Jesus, this is a massive tangent. Back to the questions. Ranty?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to Dean right now because apparently he has an updated list. So he's trying to send me.
You mean a properly written list that we can actually understand the points that he's trying to ask us to answer? You mean?
Yes.
Which one's Dean? Is he Stingray?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I just asked if he wanted to have to jump on and show it to us, but he's I think he's busy at the minute. So hopefully he's going to email it me, and then I can download it and show you guys. But we'll have an updated.
I hope he joins. I'd like to be able to demonstrate the point that Rumpus wouldn't let me demonstrate the other night with the bowling alley request. Rumpus deliberately obfuscated that point because he knew that I was coming in to wring Stingray's neck.
Well, you don't have to wring his neck, but you could have a civil chat. If he's happy, if he's listening to this, you know, I don't want it to be a shit show. I want people to talk.
I'm going to wring his neck because he thinks that you can't have obstruction on a flat plane because there's always a line of sight. I mean, how many times have we shown the boats that don't go over the horizon being obstructed by a mirage, but for some reason he doesn't think that's acceptable? I want to know why.
Well, the answer should be clear. I know you hold that there aren't actors put in place, but these people are all, I reckon Rumpus is on 100 grand a year, absolutely. They have to be like, same with Brenda. They're sort of on call, any sort of amount of hours that they have to put in, they'll put in. But the point being is, how long are you going to continue to deal with people like them, you know, before you go, hang on, I can't believe a fucking word out of these people now. So there's no point in. Well, but continue on with
Tony.
the questions.
Bloody hell! Stop making so much noise. Right, Pete. You asked that you were talking about the Aristarchus and the Aristarchus crater. So I actually have it on screen now. It's actually showing in the live stream. Is it possible that you could talk us through this? And if you need me to enlarge it a little bit so you can actually just see the full dimensions of it. But, is there any way you can explain to us, looking at this, what it actually means and what it actually, in your opinion, means for flat Earth?
Okay, man. I mean, I don't want to take up your whole time here. Maybe we could do that at a different night, but I'll go briefly over it.
Take 10 minutes. Take 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll go briefly over it. Okay, when we look at the moon, right, we are looking at some sort of a light reflection. It is not a solid body, but the image you have on here makes it look really solidified, right? Doesn't it? No matter to what degree you zoom in, I think this is all sort of incorporated into the photographic equipment as well, you know, to give this illusion. I do hold that the moon itself is a reflection of solidity. So there is solidity involved, but just like on a very perfectly clear lake front at nighttime and you see a reflection, it'd be difficult if there was no movement on the water to discern the reflection from the object itself if you didn't know better. So when we look at Aristarchus here, I can say, look, man, I'd have to go back a long way to not too long actually, but what started me off on all of this was me noticing there's a massive swathe on the moon, which matched up, first of all, just vaguely to the Milky Way swathe that can be seen in the more southern skies. And it's by that sort of investigation and finding that matched up, that led me on to my further thinking. When I realized then that everything fundamentally comes back to the same thing. So when we look at the moon and what we think of as a disparate and separate craters or features and formations, where I'm at now is that everything is just a kaleidoscopic, for want of a better term, expression of the one thing. So when you might say that's ridiculous, Peter, look at this crater Plato or something that looks completely different than Aristarchus. I say the only reason that is because just like the clouds, you're looking at it from a different direction, a different sort of magnification, with much sort of artifactual overlaying as well. Aristarchus here. This is the one that it's been picked, right? It's the oh fucking hell. Okay, when you look at the image you have on the screen, pretty high definition image. What do you see, Ranty? Can I ask you that?
To be honest, I haven't really researched it, so it's like I don't know. What do I see? I see what it looks like, a crater with with a shadow inside half of it. You know,
right? And
or to be fair, it could be on the other side. It could be the light coming from the left-hand side, and this could be the back side of it, and this is the shadow is on the back, the other side of the shadow, the opposite way to where we think
exactly. Exactly, man. So it's all a sort of a matter of perspective, but it is optical illusions going on here now, and I've showed this many times on my own Hangout. If I was to say to you, that's $333.33 that Sam Hine donated to your last channel. If you were to bet that on which way is this crater protruding, is it extending or is it distending? Where would all your money go, Ranty?
It wouldn't. It'd go towards next month when I'm doing this test in Scotland.
Answer the question.
Okay, but I'm just saying, wouldn't you bet that this is, well, actually, this is a different image I'm used to looking at now, but most people would bet that this is a distending crater. In other words, it's going inwards.
No,
right?
There's shadows on it.
Right.
How do you explain the shadows?
This is what a crater. No, but hang on, forget about the shadows for a second. This is what a crater is, right? It's a sort of a hollow into the ground. Would you agree with that? So it's some sort of area caved out and distending inwards. So would you say that this is distending inwards, Anthony?
Yeah, but look at I'm not seeing what you're presenting. Are you presenting it? I'm not seeing anything. So give me a sec.
It's on the watch page as well. So.
All right, give me a sec. But what I would say is, are there shadows in it? And if there are, how do you explain them? Right. So. How do you explain the shadows if it's in?
Right, okay. Well, that's a different matter. Before I get onto that, the only point I was going to make here, because we are dealing with illusions, you might bet all your money that is distending inwards. We know that the moon rotates once per night, right? So as it enters your sky, it will have rotated pretty much, 120, 130 degrees before it exits your sky. If you were to rotate that picture 180 degrees, Ranty, you would bet the opposite way. You would say, hang on, now that looks as if it is extending from the surface as opposed to distending. What's the opposite of a crater? Think of a word, an egg crater or something.
To be honest, Pete, I can see it. What I would say is there looks like there's some kind of cenotaph or a mine height on top. And I can see that the side that's on the right-hand side is illuminated and the casting of the shadow is going to the left. So that indicates that that's protruding up because it's catching the sunlight. But on the crater, the crater's got the shadow on the same side as the rock's got the light. So I would say that is a downward crater rather than an upward mountain, based on the shadows.
I would agree.
And just to support.
But if you turn it, if you rotate it 120 degrees or 180 degrees, Ranty, I bet you your story will change, Anthony, and you will now bet that it is a protruding or an extending function.
No. Yeah, go ahead, Dean. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, no. There's another way that you can tell that this is actually an inward crater rather than something that's out, and that is the coverage of the shadow. So we can see that the coverage of the shadow here would be less than 180 degrees. So, and the issue with that is if this was a cone shape coming out, that is near enough circular from above, we would expect that shadow to be 180 degrees or very close to it, whereas we can see here it's not.
So in that case, why is the Terminator line, when there's a sunset, not 180 degrees across the horizon from our perspective on Earth?
Sorry, say that again.
When the sun's setting, if what you're saying is true for this application, which I do tend to agree with, why do we not see a 180 degree Terminator line when the sun sets? We see a local sun and it disperses to a point. We should see a 180 degree Terminator line, basically like a tidal wave going towards the sunset. We don't see that.
With a solar filter, you absolutely do. That's exactly what you see over the ocean with a solar filter.
Have you got any evidence for that? How would that be? It would be all blotted out by the solar filter.
No, a solar filter filters out solar rays and harsh optic effects that you get due to the intensity of light.
Yeah, it also block out the Terminator. Hang on.
All the flaring and haze.
Hang on, that's bullshit. The solar filter would block out the Terminator line, obviously, but it'd also block out the ambient light that is not the Terminator line. It would only leave the sunlight.
Now, my point is, Anthony, if you just want to see the geometry of the sun, use a solar filter.
Yeah, and I'm calling bullshit on that. Show me a solar filter showing a Terminator line from sunset from Earth's perspective.
Well, I'm not. I haven't got one to hand at the moment.
Okay, take your time. No rush. There won't be a Terminator line on a solar filter, trust me.
What exactly does the solar filter do, Dean?
It just blocks out all the haze. So basically, it stops. It steps the stops down in exposure to such a degree whereby it filters out all the flare, all the optic flare, and all the sun, all the sunlight that we would normally associate with, glare, basically. So that in the end, you just get the geometry of it rather than
way more than
corona and all that.
It's way more than that.
So hang on. We have 35 million billion tons of water particulation or water vapor in the invisible phase in the atmosphere. If we were to get above that, would that sufficiently do away with a certain amount of glare?
Sorry, say that again, Pete.
So we have 35 million billion tons, according to your own science, of water vapor in its invisible phase in the atmosphere. This is obviously going to have some sort of a polluting effect. As we rise above that, would that separation do away with a lot of this glare or a lot of this interfering? Yes or no?
Well, the gas in the air isn't really the water particulates are not really particulates, are they? But it's not.
Well, it is particulates. This is what happens when the dew settles, man.
But anyway, I've just posted a link of a sunset with a solar filter versus not in the side chat. You can see the geometry.
Great, let's have a look. Bear with me. Hold the thoughts. Let me just have a look at this. I want to see this. One sec.
Just the first one that I came across.
And you're saying that's demonstrating.
Oh God, there's loads. Wait a minute, there's loads.
You're saying that's demonstrating a Terminator line with. Hang on, it's a link with a video, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a video of the sunset going down, with and without.
The reason I asked you that question, Dean, is because
there's no evidence of a Terminator line in that video, Stingray.
Okay.
Well, let's have a look at that. Let's see whether or not we can.
There's actually loads of wait a minute, sunset, solar.
All right, let me restate my point. Perhaps you've misunderstood. If the shadows on the moon pic that Pete was showing before shows, by virtue of it being less than 50%, that it must be a sticking in crater because it's less than 50%, which I agree with, then it must also be the case that if there is a 50% illumination because it's sticking out as the Earth would be at sunset, then there must be a 50% coverage of the shade, which would mean that we get a tidal wave of a Terminator line going towards the horizon, and I'll say 8 minutes after the sun's actually set, but you can argue it. But we should see a tidal wave going towards the horizon when the sun sets, and it should be a line going towards the horizon in a north direction or south direction, whichever way it is, but we don't actually see that.
That's trickery. the sun fades out. I mean, if I put it on slow, what I mean is, it fades out.
It can't fade out on their model. It can't fade out on their model.
It literally fades out. Let me just rewind this. It's a
it can't do that on their model though, Ronson.
No, it can. It's a sphere. If it's a sphere, then you don't get a hash Terminator line on a sphere. You get it with angled occlusion.
Yeah, you do. You get 50% illumination at all times. We should get a Terminator line that travels north to south and it heads towards the horizon. And I'll say 8 minutes after the sun's actually set, but we don't see that, do we?
You wouldn't get through that. You wouldn't get that due to two effects: the inverse square law of light and Rayleigh scattering in the atmosphere. There's no possible way you would have a clear divide between the two. It's just impossible.
It's funny you should mention the inverse square law of light, because that's the reason why you wouldn't get a lunar eclipse on your model either. You don't get a lunar eclipse on your model.
We wouldn't get a
lunar eclipse because of the inverse square law effect of light. Light doesn't travel as far as what it needs to create the shadow that you need on your lunar eclipse on your model. Have you tried modeling this?
Then I'm really sorry, Anthony. Yes, I have, and I'm really sorry you misunderstand the inverse square law.
Light fades inversely proportionate to its distance, and it can't cast a shadow for the distance that's necessary because of that law.
Where do you think we are in that curve? Or that exponent, where do you think the Earth sits?
What do you mean? I don't understand your question.
The inverse square law dictates that very close, it's incredibly bright and incredibly intense and incredibly energetic. Far away, it's not. But the drop
you claim you've modelled this.
I don't need to model it. All computer light simulations are actually based off inverse square law. I had to model cubic.
Well, you did say a second ago that you've modelled it.
Well, you don't model it. You just put in a light. Light, unless
I'm
you tell it.
quoting you. You said that you've modelled this and it works. That's what you said a minute ago. Did I not hear that?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, I could model it and it'll work.
Right. I'm going to challenge you to model it and show me that when you put the light the way that the light actually works, model the light correctly, you cannot get a lunar eclipse on your model. It doesn't work. Because the light doesn't travel far enough to cast a shadow far enough.
So you think if I'm saying to
you... No,
I know.
I don't think I know I've done it. You don't get a lunar eclipse on your model.
So your claim to me is if I think the light is travelling over 90 million miles to us...
93.
Okay. But over 90 million miles in my model, that you think that due to the inverse square law, it travelling another 238,000 miles is fucking impossible. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it diffuses out. You don't get the shadow that's required from the Earth.
So it didn't diffuse out before it got to us, but then for some reason it's going to diffuse out those last two.
No, the shadow from the Earth diffuses out. It doesn't reach the moon at all. Because so shadow has got a inverse square fall off. Then is that what you're saying? Yeah, the light gets round the Earth.
No, we're on about shadow now. Shadow is lack of light. So what exactly in shadow? What energy in shadow is that?
Given that you've not modelled it yet, let's come back to this when you have.
I'm trying to get an idea of how you're saying. I've never been aware that the shadow has an inverse square law attached.
It's not the shadow that's got the attachment to it. It's the light that's attached to it, and the creation of the shadow doesn't stretch far enough.
The absence of that light, which we call shadow, you're saying the shadow doesn't stretch far enough.
It diffuses into the background before it gets to the sun.
Diffuses. Right, so you're saying
shadow the light fails to reach the light fails to reach the moon. So go and test it by modelling it and do light properly in your model, and let us know how you get on with that.
You are correct. The light fails to illuminate the moon, but because the Earth is covering it up.
Yeah. No, not because the Earth's covering up, because the light doesn't get that far. Model it out, and then let's see how your assertion for is it your first point? Let's see how that works out on your own model before criticising ours.
I still think, could you draw me a curve that you would say is the inverse square law?
I don't care what you think. I'm interested in what you can demonstrate with your model.
I'm actually just saying, because I don't think you understand what inverse square law is in terms of the magnitude.
Double the distance, half the power.
That's right. Okay. So can you draw me a curve that would represent light intensity from the sun?
Stop flipping the burden. You're claiming that the lunar eclipse can't be modelled on the flat Earth model, but you're ignoring the fact that it can't be modelled on your own model either.
No, I'm really not.
Yeah, you are. I'm telling you, it doesn't model out. So go model it and let me know when you've done it, and then we'll come back to that point.
So, Dean,
the answer is yes, Sleeping Warrior. I'll do that because I'm not sure.
No, the answer is no. I can't be asked having that much effort into correcting.
No problem. We'll accept that as a concession. We'll accept that as a concession. Scribble out number 1. That's gone off your list.
It's not a concession.
Yeah, it is. You said you can't be asked modelling it. It takes like 2 minutes to model it when you know what you're doing, and I've seen it modelled and it doesn't work. So unless you can demonstrate that it works on your own model, we don't have to answer anything on that point because your point fails. Let's deal with point 2.
No. Wait a minute. You are failing to understand what the inverse square law is.
No, I'm not. Double the distance, half the power. I'm not.
No,
stop,
you know
stop
the definition.
Me. Model it on your own model
definition.
First.
You
Stingray,
know the definition.
model it on your model first, and then we'll deal with your question.
Draw me a curve with it, and I will. Draw me a curve with the inverse square law, and I will.
Is with regards to question 2, is question 2
really hard to hear you as well.
Brian, could you mute up for just
a minute? Sorry.
Cheers.
Number 2, one of your refined questions, Stingray.
Sorry. Wait a minute, say that
again. The bowling alley question about the flat Earth. Like you said, get a flat surface and demonstrate obstruction from the bottom up on a flat surface.
Oh, yeah, here you go. Yeah. So hidden from the bottom up over a flat surface, we need the theory and maths, and we need to know whether it's scalable.
Yeah.
With an object big enough to see, with the actual observation medium, whether it be cones and rods in our eyes or an optic.
Can you answer my question? Is this one of the questions that you've refined, or is it still as it was?
No, I've refined it, but that's it. You know, disregard the Rayleigh criterion because we'll actually have a sensor that can actually discern an object, or assume that can actually resolve an object.
Okay, so
now what we need to do is we need to see something disappearing from the bottom up. But importantly, I haven't added this sentence to it yet in the revised bit, but not where our heliocentric model says there's a curve.
No worries. Ranty, present my screen. This is the point I was going to present to you the other night.
Listen, just let me finish here. Pete, just don't worry. I want to get back to Aristarchus, but we'll just let Dean and Tony go at this because I know Dean hasn't got very long. So I'm not.
All right. So I'll give way. I'll give way after this point. All right. So listen. So Dean. So Ranty's presenting me, right? So what was I going to say?
These two circle things, whatever they are.
Yeah. So your claim is that on a flat surface, because we've got a continuous line of sight, when you put it in Muppet vision and you get it in orthographic view, it can't disappear from the ground up when it's a flat plane.
I'm not on about orthographic view.
Muppet vision. That's how you represented it last time I saw you do this.
No. I'm not about Muppet vision. I'm just on about I'm just on about perspective. Perspective view.
All right.
Geometric reality. That's the important thing.
All right. So this is a geometric reality of a flat.
Wait a minute. Just really quickly. Are you actually going to create mirage effects here or something?
Your request is blockage from the bottom up.
No, disappearing from the bottom up.
Yeah, I'm going to demonstrate that now optically.
However, I know how to qualify this better, and I just told Ranty about it in Skype that I've got the perfect video that he could make to demonstrate that the Earth is flat, or it will demonstrate that the Earth is geometrically a sphere.
All right, but the claim that you've got on your list of 10 things. This one says you want to see something on a flat plane disappearing, obstructing from the bottom up, correct?
Yes.
Right. So this is a video from Good Times for All. He did it about 2-3 years ago before you were getting paid to be in the discussion. And he's got 2 paint lids.
Oh my God. Will you stop lying?
He's got 2 paint lids.
Take it back, Anthony.
Yeah, all right, I'll take it back.
Good.
He's got 2 paint lids and he's coloured in the circles to make them obvious so that you can see what you're looking at. So notice the features. He's got the circular pore lid, he's got a circle inside it, and he's got them flipped. The orientations flipped so that you can see the effects. Right? Numbered scale chart that's just relative. There's no units in it. You don't need units when it's relative. But anyway. So basically, he's showing that the total distance that he's looking over this is longer than a bowling alley, because that was the criticism that I used against the bowling alley argument. And I know you're going to say that the floor's not flat, and I'm going to say it's flat enough for this purpose. But the point that he shows is that when he's trying to look at these lids over a long distance, and he puts them at set distances, so he measures out the distances as he goes further and further back. As he starts to go further and further back, nothing really happens. You've still got your line of sight and everything's looking hunky-dory and everything's okay. So this is consistent with your claim that things can't be obstructed from the bottom up. But now we're getting to the point where, let's move it off there, he's 100 feet away, and we're beginning to get that layer of reflection, the layer of whatever mirage-y thing, right?
Mirage effect, yes.
Now, bear in mind, this is not a curve.
Reflection on the floor.
No, that's reflection. I think that's, I don't know, I think it depends what floor it is.
It's a reflection on the floor.
Well, it's concrete. It's a concrete floor. But the point is...
shiny floor already, but no, continue, yeah.
Well, I suppose it is reflecting some light, but I wouldn't class it as like shiny. But anyway, the point is, it's matching the observation that Ranty gets. When he gets to a certain distance, we seem to get the reflection, right? Now, this reflection can't happen on a ball.
Well, that's slightly different. It's an inferior mirage, I see. This is more of a reflection.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is a reflection. Well, I suppose it could be. But if there's a temperature differential, it could be a mirage kind of effect. You don't know.
Yeah, but Ranty, if you think back to Shark Boat, Ranty, your shark boat was reflecting the boat underneath itself, and all of the mirages that we see are reflecting the mirages of the thing above it. They're reflecting it below. That's where we draw the line.
Get to the punchline.
Yeah,
well, hang on, Manty. Before you do, so we can see this is the floor that's reflecting here. Now, floors aren't generally reflecting, but water is reflective, right? So hang on.
You're obfuscating my point, Pete.
No, continue. Yeah, go on.
Just give me a minute. So he was at 100 feet. Now he's getting up to 240 feet. And now you'll see, as he gets a little bit further down, that the bottoms are beginning to get obscured. Not totally obscured yet, but they're beginning to get obscured by something that's definitely not the curvature of the floor, but this is obstruction from the bottom up on a flat plane, as per your request. So my question to you is...
That's distortion, not obstruction.
Is distortion obstruction or not?
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Right, so can you read any of the line? Can you see any of the lines?
No, because they're distorted.
Right,
I do not see the floor in front of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you can see 10, you can see 9, you can see 8, 7, 6, 5.
Get it. Yeah,
and then it starts getting blurred.
Yep, absolutely, yep.
So this distortion, why are you not accepting this distortion is obstruction?
Because it's distortion. Obstruction
it's a fucking
or occlusion.
Reflection, man. Look at the reflection, how clear
it could be a reflection, it's fine, I don't care. But the point is...
Clear because you have to explain it then, Dean.
It's a reflective floor. But no, this is...
Dean...
You said obstruction from the bottom up. 2 seconds. This is not obstruction. This is blurring it. This is
right.
This is.
What's
I've lost
obstructing
detail.
the white
I
part?
can still see that hole at the bottom of the one on the right.
Well, can you?
Yeah, but what's obstructing the white? Wait. What's obstructing the white part that was below the hole a minute ago? That's now replaced by the hole.
This is a mirage effect now.
Yeah, so it's obstruction, isn't it? It's blockage, atmospheric blockage.
No, it's atmospheric distortion, not blockage, not occlusion or hidden from the bottom up. This is not hidden.
Right,
this
it is.
Right, it's a simple question.
So where's the white band gone from underneath the hole?
Tony, let me just ask a simple question. Can you still see that white band underneath the hole?
Right. Notice what happens when he raises his elevation to get out of that dirty air or whatever it is. Notice you can see the bottom bit underneath the the hole.
The reflection. Honestly, you can even see the reflection on the floor.
We know what mirage effects are, and we know what refraction is. And these are.
Yeah, but where's the white bit under the hole? Why is the white bit under the hole being obstructed?
My question to you
is:
why isn't the floor covering up them? That's what you should be demonstrating.
All right, can I just bring some order?
No, the word used in your question is obstruction.
Tony, it would be nice if somebody just said, yes, you can no longer see the white underneath it. I concede that point. That's it. Because it's true. Yeah. You can no longer see it. For whatever reason you choose to call that, simply by moving the camera further and further away, this is the end result. Now, it's nothing blocking it. There's nothing physical in the way.
There you go. Yeah, I will concede that atmospheric refraction is making it so that I cannot discern the bottom of that because it's blended it all in. However,
it's not our atmospheric reflection. It's the reflection overlapping on the main thing, man.
But please,
can I ask Dean a question?
Yeah, just let me just say this. Okay. But please be aware, this is not occluded or hidden by something.
It is.
This is atmospheric refraction. Normally,
it's being occluded by the reflection.
Please let me finish. Can I finish?
Yeah, let him finish, please.
What we would expect to see is something hiding it. In other words, something has now moved in front of it. That is what occlusion is.
Right. So why is the white of the underneath the hole not being seen anymore if it's not occluded?
The light's been bent. There you go.
The light's being bent. It's only over 460 feet. Are you telling me that this is looming?
No, I'm saying you can bend light over 3 or 4 foot if you want.
Right. Somebody mute for fuck's sake.
That's Brian still. I think it's.
So your request states.
I'm just sitting totally still in a car without engine turned off.
Okay. Sounds like you were cleaning your windscreen or something.
Your request states hidden from the bottom up over a flat surface, right? This is hidden from the bottom up on a flat surface. Whether it be reflection or otherwise, you can't see the white underneath the hole.
I'll tell you what, Anthony. I'll tell you what. I'm going to concede the point that I can now... Listen.
I'm done.
Listen, that I can now no longer make out the bottom of that. However, I'm going to change my point too because of you. I'm now going to say occluded from the bottom up.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the sound of moving the globe posts.
Yeah. No. The ocean. The ocean. Obscures or occludes.
What? Hang on. What would you expect to happen if he had the ability to go back 1,000 feet? What would you expect materialize?
Wait, I can't hear you. So that noise.
Yeah, I'd like. Well,
okay,
actually,
you can only go back.
Could Brian ask his question and then you, Pete, and then Brian, if you could go on mute after you've asked your question.
I will do. Yes. Dean, remember the other night? I wasn't in the call at the time. I was on mute. I wasn't in the call, but you and Rumpus were showing a photograph. It was from somewhere near Rottnest Island, and it showed like the top half of a ship occluded.
Yeah.
Now, Ranty, you said that you had done some research on this, and it was a 10-foot camera height, but there was a 3-meter swell. Isn't that correct?
True.
On the day.
Whoa! Wait a minute. A 3-meter swell.
Yes.
A 3-meter swell, you would not go sailing in, by the way.
1 second.
Shut the lanes down at 3 meters.
No, they don't. It's only 10 feet. That's only 10 feet.
Yeah, you wouldn't go out in 10-foot swells.
It's not a 10-foot wave. It's 5 foot
Dean, you're not understanding. You won't go out in a small boat in 10-foot swells if the swells are not wide. A 10-foot swell can be 100 meters wide and more. It's not going to be always like 5 foot wide. Do you understand what I mean? If you're in a small boat and there's a 10-foot swell, then you're going to be going up and down. It's deadly. Your boat's going to be in trouble.
Oscillation is based on wind speed. I'm well aware of all of this.
Right. But have you been out in water much yourself? Have you been on the sea a whole lot?
I used to actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I spent a good bit of time on the sea when I was younger. Not in big boats, but in smaller boats. So I know what a small swell, or let's say a close together swell, but a high swell will do. Okay, a 5-foot high swell, if it's close together, will be lethal if you're in a 16-foot boat, right? Now, the point I'm making is this: in the foreground, right, besides all the other points to do with that photograph that Ranty researched, because I only named 2 of them there. In the foreground, there was another thing. And that other thing was a very big ship. Okay? Now, isn't that correct?
It is.
They're both actually the same height. In fact, the Hunagayan Spirit
one second. I just need a concession on that. In the foreground, there was another ship. Isn't that correct?
Oh, there's 3. Yeah, there's 3 ships in the photo.
And they're not small ships. They're not small boats. They're ships.
No.
They're proper ships. I don't know if they're as big as a container. I don't know if they're as big as an oil tanker, but they're like container type ships. Are they about that size?
No, I looked up the stats on them, and they are quite sizable. That's how I knew the height of the Hunagayan Spirit.
Well, what height are they and length in average, would you say?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up again. I only know that I only looked up the deck. The loaded weight of the Hunagayan Spirit, the deck sits about 36 feet, and it's got a rail of about 4 foot. But unloaded, which it was at that point, we were missing 50 odd foot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that basically right there, is there a lot of ships? Is that a bit of a shipping lane? Is there a lot of ships in and out of that exact point?
Yes.
Yes, right, because the waters are pretty deep there. They fall off deep. It's not correct, Randy, close enough to Rottnest Island. The topography falls off deep. Is Randy there?
I'm here, yes.
I don't think he hears.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. the topography falls off pretty steadily at Rottnest Island.
Yeah.
Right. That's why they're able to have those big ships, Dean. Do you know what the wake of a ship is? What happens when there's a wake?
Yes. Well, actually, the wake is dependent based on the displacement and the bulbous bow along with the thrust.
Yeah, but yes. you know what a wake is. Now,
I am very aware of it.
Yes, right. So there's big ships coming in here or there regular. Now, there's the ship that is missing, right, the half of it. Then there's the other, I don't know about the other third ship. I don't remember that one. I'm only going to speak about the two I remember. There's the other big ship that's in the foreground, okay? Yeah. Now, both of those ships are going to give a swell, right, due to a wake, right? That swell will be wide, but it will be high. Now, you have to take those things
high do you think
into account.
Well, I do. Because of perspective, that kind of thing could only hide a lot of the ship being very close to you. When it's closer to the... Listen, let me just finish.
One second. Which ship can you see the most of?
I don't know. I forgot the name.
The one closest to you.
Obviously. I have a really easy way to solve this equation immediately, right? So we had two boats in the observation, right? So we know that the observer was at 10 foot. We know there was a lot of swell going on. There was wind. There was shoaling happening, etc. Right? Now, obviously, boats float. Right, so we had a boat at 7 miles away, the big boat, the one that was fully in view. There was nothing missing on it, correct?
Yes.
Right. Now, that was from a viewer height of 10 feet. Refracted hidden should have been about 4.5 feet. So essentially nothing. Pure line of sight. Agreed, yeah? But then when we went to the one that was only about 2.5 miles further back, so we'll do 10 miles further. We'll do it at 10 miles. Do you know what the hidden should have been, including refraction?
Oh, but without refraction, it'd be about 800 inches.
No, about 19 feet. Now, we were specifically told yesterday and today by Dean that 50 feet was missing. How is 50 feet missing on a boat that's only 10 miles away with a viewer height of 10 feet? Nothing in the way, no obstruction bearing in mind. This is without obstruction. This is across a curved surface of just 19 feet. How come it suddenly miraculously got to 50 feet hidden when you had the distances up on your screen of how far away that boat was?
You're not using nautical miles, and that's what it was measured in.
It's only 1.1 miles, and it was 9.9. So it was 9.9 nautical miles. So let's say 11 then. Let's move it up to 11 miles away, normal miles. That would be 10 nautical miles. How come refracted hidden is only 25 feet? Where do you get 50 feet of hidden from?
Well, that's what I'm looking at when I see it.
Okay, so 50 feet's missing, but the Earth curve calculator says only 25 feet should be missing. So how come 50 feet's missing?
Come on, Dean.
It's more curvy than we think.
I have evidence for the contrary of that, I think.
But I mean, no. You're saying that based on 10. You're saying that based on the camera, the observer's at 10 foot. But put the observer at 6 foot then.
But he wasn't at 6 feet. He was at 10 feet.
Well, I thought it was at 6. Well, that's what it was. That's what it was on Metabunk anyway.
And the swell was 3 meters.
Oh, this is funny.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm going to go back on...
Wait a minute. That's not entirely that funny if you are demonstrating that there's more curve than I thought there was. You know that, right?
Yeah, we live on a
but
very
there can't be
boat.
more. There can only be what the official measurements are, Dean. You know what I mean?
Hang on. Fundamentally, Dean, what you're saying is, at even 50 miles, if the Earth is flat, I mean, a perfect calm day, we should still be able to see all of that ship with sufficient zoom.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
That is retarded, man.
No, you can't.
You have no idea how your eyes work, and you have no idea how this
I have
Earth...
absolutely 100% knowledge of how
unless it's something else motivating,
rays,
right?
light, how light gets excited, all that kind of stuff. I can.
Dean,
I know
at 50
how
miles away, that boat would be too small. You wouldn't be able to see it.
I have another
I'm really
question.
sorry, but angular size is based on your viewing optic and sensory medium. If I've got a telescope, no, it's not. Really sorry.
No, it's not, Dean. Angular size is angular size change, no matter what way you twist and turn it. It's distance is...
Angular size...
Distance dictates angular size.
Ryan.
Angular size is from a distance, Dean.
Oh my God.
It's not just a measurement.
Angular size is based on the field of view... And yes, decreases with distance. However,
it's based on
if
the
I
distance.
zoom, however, if I However, if I zoom in, I am increasing the angular size of that based on the optic and the sensor. It is that simple, and this is
no, that's not true. That's not based on the optic and the sensor. It's based entirely on its actual size and its angular size, or its distance and its angular size.
The angular size
is the distance and the angle size.
Viewing medium. Well, put it this way then. How come I could get let's say a P1000, and let's say something's got an angular size of, let's say, 1 arc second, and then I can zoom in. And
at what distance? At what distance?
Doesn't matter.
It does, because it's not angular size. Otherwise, is it? It's from a given distance.
Okay.
The angular size is the angle in your viewing plane
from a given distance,
where you can fit the object.
No, from a given distance in the definition.
So angular size is the size in your vision, which is based on angles to the physical geometry.
Based on the angle and the distance, not just the angle, because it's not just a measurement, it's
distance. This at the moment, when you're talking about angular size, you have done what you call a view transformation on it.
No. When we're talking about angular size, we talk about two parts, not one part, two parts. The first part's the angle size, and the second part is the distance.
What's angular size measured in, Anthony?
Arc seconds or arc minutes or degrees.
Let's call it degrees.
But angular size is from a distance.
Let's call it degrees.
Get the definition on screen. Get the definition on
degrees. So if something is
from
degree,
a distance,
listen,
you're missing the second part. Why do you keep doing it? No. Why do you keep missing the second part off?
I know what perspective is, Anthony. I know.
I'm not asking about perspective. I'm asking about angular size.
Right.
Why
angular size. Angular size of an object at a fixed distance changes based on the field of view and zoom level and focal length. It's that fucking simple. I'm really sorry. If you want to argue the point, that's fine. You're just plain wrong.
Yeah, but from a distance.
I've got the citation up. So, first page of Google, the first thing that pops up. For example, the moon has an angular size of approximately 30 arc minutes. The angular size of an object is determined by its actual size and its distance.
I'm on about in a viewing plane, not in reality. So when I say angular size in relation to the Rayleigh criteria, imagine we've got.
When you say gravity, you reference it as a force.
Oh my God! Let's not do this. The gravitational force is a force. Gravity is a theory, right? So.
What?
The gravitational force is a force. Gravity is a theory. Just like
gravity is.
Stick on topic.
Yeah, stay on topic.
Let's not go down that road.
So magnetics is not.
So
a force.
Can we have a concession
magnetic
then?
Force is a force.
Can we have a concession then? Angular size is the size from a set distance.
If you're on about a world transformation, then yes, based in 360 degrees. Yes.
So what are you on about then?
Based on distance.
Have you got a special interpretation?
No. What I'm on about is we can work out with a camera the size of something if we know the distance.
Yeah, if you know the distance, it requires the distance.
Right. Except I can change how much that object takes up in that frame based on zoom level, basically.
Yeah, is that going to be accurate for working out distance?
You can do. It can be fairly accurate. But anyway, wait a minute. Let me just think.
So thank you for confirming that angular size is not just an angle measurement. I'll make sure that I let Geo Strieber and Sean Huffroad and all those morons.
No. Wait a minute. Let me just think.
Yeah, they don't think that angular size.
Shut up, everybody! Shut up. 2 seconds. Wait a minute, please. Just give me a minute because I'm working and I didn't have time to come onto it, and now I'm thinking. Wait a minute.
You mean the rumpus is feeding you something in the background that he's telling you to say?
No,
I'm not. No, it's not. I'm actually.
Hi, Rumpus. Hi, Rumpus. How are you doing?
Listen,
don't be pat.
I'd like to.
No, wait a minute. Okay. Sorry. Wait a minute. Sorry. Now thinking over in my head, everything that you said was correct in angular size, and what I said in world transformation was not.
Hi, Rumpus. Thanks for correcting us, Rumpus.
I'm not. Wait a minute. Let me see if I've got any Skype messages. Wait there. No, I haven't. So no, it's not even. You're not even haphazardly correct.
He's fucking sitting in the next cubicle next to you.
No one's messaged me, unfortunately. But anyway, no. The point is quite simply this: when that second point is really simply. I've changed it now, thanks to you, Anthony. I've changed my second point. I've said occluded and obscures from the bottom up over a flat surface, because that's what we see in these. Yeah, that's what we see.
I've already demonstrated your obscurement.
occluded.
Yeah, occluded by the mirage.
Not distorted. Oh, no. A mirage distorts. It doesn't occlude.
Yeah, but why is the white that's underneath the hole?
It's distorted. You can't make it
No,
out.
it's been occluded by the distortion, right? It is covering it.
Right, anyway.
It's the object itself blending into its reflection.
Occluded by another object, put it that way. And in our case,
sunset, by the way, to push
please just listen. Occluded means another object has moved in front of it. That is it. Something else is occluding it. In our case, it's the water.
It doesn't have to be an object. It can be anything that's stopping you from seeing the thing that's physically there.
Occluded by physical surface.
Yeah, but the point is, when you draw it in Muppet Vision... hang on, listen. When you draw it in Muppet Vision, you put a clear line of sight to it, but in the real world, when you see whatever we see through our eyes, there's something stopping us from seeing that bit underneath the hole, and I'm saying that we've satisfied your evidential burden against us. We've done it. You can scribble it off, not adjust it.
Oh, no, I've got it now, occluded by physical obstructions from the bottom up. I've got it now. Cheers. That's sorted. I wanted to perfect this list, and due to semantics and definitions,
moving the goalposts.
Okay, Tony, Pete, do you want to have a go? Do you want to say something here?
Not really, because Dean is just going to defend this. These arguments are over and done and dusted. All flat earthers should be moving on. They're not taking these things too seriously anyway. Dean knows well that the earth is flat and stationary. And the thing is here, let me tell you, when you're looking at an object, hang on, when you're looking at an object over the water, you have to take different perspectives into consideration. The part of the object that you can see through the air directly, there's a different sense of perspective that applies than the part that is intersecting with the ground, right? Because when you're looking at something, you have to take in everything along the ground from you to the target where it's intersected into your perspective there, as opposed to something that the part of it you can see through the air where there's no obstruction whatsoever. And this plays a massive role in terms of things being obstructed alongside many other factors. The major factor being, let me just say, well, we saw it with the plates there in the shiny surface of the floor. We know water is reflective, and especially when you're dealing with much distance, right, over a flat plane, the water compresses up and behaves like a local mirror. And then what becomes occluded is the object itself being melded with its reflection, and we get all of this strange looking images to our eyes then.
Stingray, what that really means is Pete hasn't got anything to challenge you on your points.
Okay.
I could repeat that. I could repeat what he said.
He hasn't made any points
before he was saying it.
Okay, calm down.
Ranty, on this point, Ranty, I'm going to share my screen because you know I said I've got a perfect experiment for you to prove.
Well, what I would like, if possible, is it possible for you to post your 10 new questions, because for some reason I can't download it. I've tried it in the Skype and it's not downloaded.
I've actually downloaded it from the same link, from the same Skype chat that sent it to you. So it's a bit weird. But yes, I'll email you.
All right. So is it possible to put it in this group's chat so that someone can download it and we can present it? Because I can't see it.
But this is really important because this is the way that you prove the Earth is flat.
Okay.
No, it's not. No, because what you're doing, you're proving what you see with what you see. So it would be the equivalent. Hold on. It would be the equivalent of you looking at a mountain from the distance. You can't see. Hold on. You can't see some of it. Okay. Now you're trying to figure out why. But the only thing you have to determine why you can't see it is you not seeing it. So you're trying to gather why you don't see something from why you don't see it.
Mate, can I just stop you? This is brilliant, but I've yet to show you the perfect test.
Okay, let's see this perfect test. Let's see it.
Does it involve theodolites in the horizon?
I haven't even started showing you it or anything.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's going to be based on an observation of an object from far away. So what you're going to do is look at an object, not see some of it, and then explain why you don't see some of it because of the some of it you don't see. So whatever you need to do, but go ahead.
In terms of spherical Earth geometry, this is where it all comes back to the math. That's the way he'll do it.
Okay, well, I'd like to see this. So if you guys can just
give
him a minute or two just to put this on the screen, I'd like to see what he's got, and then
can you see what I'm drawing at the moment?
Yes, see a squiggle.
Okay, cool. Right. So we've got a wait a minute. Let me just do this. So let's say we've got the ocean. We've got the land that comes down. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit crude, and this is why I say it'd be good for you, Ranty, to do this. And then we've got the ocean level here, and then we will have a ship that we can clearly get the details of. Now, I don't know how you do this, but the most important.
I do.
That's because you're not.
Well, yeah, there is that site, but I don't know how you. Well, I don't live near. I live nowhere near fucking water, so you know. I'm a bit...
Yeah, I can essentially get any.
Yeah. So anyway, let's say we can determine what you need to do is you need to determine the top of this. So let's call this. This is the key point here. Oh shit me, I'm still on this. So this is the key point here, is this top bit here, and we'll call this point A. Now we need to know the height of A, and I don't suppose it needs to be incredibly accurate, but let's just say for the sake of argument, like on the Hunagayan Spirit, I think deck 8 is at 100 foot, so let's just say 100 foot, yeah? So let's say we've got survey data, you know that this ship, the top of it sits 100 foot out of the water. Now, if you can find a place that above sea level sits 100 foot, yeah? You follow me so far?
Yep.
And we have a camera that's set up, and you have the center autofocal point, or you turn on the crosshair, and you put it absolutely on the top of that vessel.
The problem is...
This is Miles Davis's argument. Stupid
yeah, I was
shit.
going to say, when we do this, we're actually 50 feet off.
Wait a minute, I can't hear again.
Yeah, just let him finish. Just let him round up.
Okay. So I don't know if someone's already suggested this anyway, but the point is we've got two parallel lines here. Now, perspective dictates that if this is the center of the lens, and you know we've got the little crosshair thing that you can actually place on the top of the ship, that top of the ship will never leave that center line going away. Perspective says that if I'll draw a quick perspective view. So let's say this is the view of the camera, and then this is the center line here, and then we see the ship here. I'll just draw it as a box. If it's going away, if this is the center line and the camera's pointed near enough a parallel line, so as level as it can be, it wouldn't have to be incredibly accurate. It would actually just decrease in size to the vanishing point before we can't resolve it anymore.
Right.
But
I've got two objections.
The most important thing is at point 1, 2, and 3. The A is always going to be on this crosshair.
I've got two objections.
Oh, okay.
You just contradicted me.
I have two.
Okay,
I have a big one.
One at a time.
Okay, so you've drawn it orthographically, and you haven't reduced the height of the target as a function of distance in line with perspective, right? That's the first point.
No, okay, sorry, wait a minute. This is perspective view.
It's not. It's orthographic. It's Muppet vision, isn't it?
No, this is the same.
No, that's orthographic view. That's not perspective.
No, this is
not perspective.
No,
do you know how we know it's not perspective?
Wait a minute. This is perspective, as in it's going away to a vanishing point.
No, that's not what happens. So where you've got your little man,
nothing's getting smaller. Nothing's getting smaller in the distance.
Oh
so
my
you're
God.
not. You're not drawing perspective if you're drawing it in its actual size from 1,000 feet away. It should be significantly smaller.
Yes, I will make
Daniel Rowbotham debunked this.
There's another problem as well.
Jesus Christ! Wait a minute. Give me a second. Okay, it starts out this size, and then here it gets this size, and then here it gets this size.
Yeah, but then there's another problem.
There we go, perspective.
There's another problem though. So you've got where you've got the word center on. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at this 10 seconds behind.
Oh,
so
yeah. Sorry. Well, I'm sharing it in Skype as well, Anthony.
Oh, are you? Hang on, let me look in Skype. Oh, yeah, sorry, I see it right. So where you've got your line that says the word center on it, I'm assuming that the center is the center of camera, and that's the eye line, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Well, center of the lens. Yes.
Yeah, well, the ocean, or the water underneath the blue line, rises to eye level, and you haven't got it rising to eye level, have you?
The water won't rise to eye level.
Yeah, it does. That's what perspective does. It rises to your eye line.
Hang on.
No,
Imagine.
No. So perspective perspective can rise to, well, put it this way.
Your horizon is lower there than what it is in real world.
Go have a look at Tommy's.
You're not drawing perspective. You're not doing perspective.
Hang on, please. Let's just hang on because hang on. Let me just say because you put up.
Hang on, that's super
Ryan,
Brian.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, hang on. This will settle it. Dean, because you put in specific figures here of 100 feet, let's just say the distance between the cliff face and the ship is 10 miles, right? Yeah. If you brought that ship into 1 mile, where you'd have A in the same position to the camera crosshairs.
Yes. Yeah.
So what you're saying is no matter how far that distance is from cliff to target, A is always going to be on one central line in relation to the...
That's how perspective works, yes.
So, no, hang on. That is refuting what you just said about perspective then, isn't it?
No, because this here is my perspective view.
Yes.
And this is the center line here. And this box, we're on about the top of this box, which always sits on that line going away till it hits a vanishing point.
So right. So how does this reflect in reality here and the initial diagram? Because if we have 10 ships side by side on a lateral plane here, and this one here that you've drawn in at A is where it is, we have another ship 100 feet to the right of it, but it's 2 miles further on. That A line A.
Yeah, okay. So, I'll draw this then. So here we've got.
You need to bring
the. Wait a minute. We've got point 1. We've got point 2, and it's the top of the ship is always going to sit here in reality, and this is where it's going to sit. However,
this is fucking nonsense.
However, what are you saying? This is
can I connect
view. This is the perspective, Pete.
I know that.
Okay, so now this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So at position 1, it's going to look this big. Position 2, it's going to look this big. Position 3, it's not going to be seen that much at all. Except it will. The laws of parallel lines.
No, Dean.
Converge upwards. That's perspective right there.
Can I?
Yeah, but you're not correctly. Hang on, you're not correctly demonstrating perspective with regards to the waterline.
Oh Jesus Christ! I'll do this.
1 second.
And then
Can I put this to bed?
I'll do it in 3D.
Yes, Brian. Go ahead. Yes, Brian. Go ahead.
1 second. Dean, this was debunked, and that's how by Samuel Rowbotham, and that's how he proved his Bedford levels test. What it was is that when he lined up his telescope with the flags that were on top of the posts down along the Bedford levels, what was happening is, in a straight line, as the further away the posts got, the flags got, the lower they were getting in his eye line through the telescope.
Yeah, we'd expect that.
The reason for that was angular size change. So what he did is he lined up the first 2 posts. He lined up the telescope with the first 2 posts. He said, now if they fall away after that, then it's our curve. If they don't, then it's flat. And they didn't fall away. And he proved that they didn't fall away. Because he lined it up with the first 2. What you're saying there won't work, because after a while, it's not going to happen.
If you've got a link, to all...
Sorry, 1 second. Just let me say something. If you're 100 foot above sea level, the sea will appear to rise to your eye level, but it still is not actually rising. It just appears because it stretches out so far. So that sea is actually still 100 foot down. Let's just say the sea level is actually still 100 foot below you. Right? And if you're looking at the very top of something that's 100 foot off the sea, and you're 100 foot off the sea, a further that goes away from you, the lower that's going to go in your eye line. So that is just a perspective thing that happens due to angular size change. What you're saying there would never work.
It absolutely would.
Because that won't prove a globe or a flat, if you understand what I mean.
It absolutely would prove one or the other of this.
Can I just say,
so if I've got...
Listen, you haven't drawn the right way for perspective. You haven't.
Sorry, say again, Hanson.
You haven't drawn the waterline the correct way for perspective. It should have risen to eye level. It should have been on an angle. It shouldn't have been parallel. That's one of the main problems with Muppet Vision, and that's why we don't like it.
No. So the bottom was the orthographic. The perspective was the one at the top, and that did come up to a convergence point. Everything went to a convergence point, and that was the point of it. But let me just show you this. It'll be easy if I just do the damn thing in 3D.
Well, do you want to actually want to see a boat doing exactly what you asked?
And you were exactly in line with the top, and you kept the camera in line with the top.
Oh, in line with the top. Damn it, no,
Ranty.
I missed that part.
Right.
Ranty, the one you want to show him.
So wait a minute. Just let me just show you this really quickly. So let's say this is let's say that there's I don't know, some structure that is, up like that. Now, let's say this is the top here, and this is 100 foot of this ship on this flat plane. Now, I want to move this camera, the observer, exactly to the top height. I've just done that by snapping, but you'd find out the height, and then you'd go this, and you'd center the the camera on that single top. Now, if I look through the camera on the left, we can see that the center of it is dead on the top. So that means that due to perspective now, if this thing moves away, it never leaves that top. Now on a flat surface, it will never leave the top. Now let's put a few more in here. Let's have this that's out there. I should have. I'll tell you what. I'll make these.
How do you know what will happen on an Earth-sized flat surface?
Yeah. Have them staggered, Dean. Have them staggered all the way into the distance.
Yeah. No, I am going to do.
How do you know what's going to happen?
Pete.
How do you know what would happen on an Earth-sized flat plane visually with atmosphere and everything?
Well, it depends on the atmosphere on the day.
No. I didn't ask. How do you know what would happen on a flat plane that was the size of the Earth? How do you know what would happen visually when you say this can't happen on a flat plane the size of Earth? How do you know that?
Because we understand geometry.
Okay, you understand. So how did you go out there and prove it?
We don't. We know what 3D is.
Okay, here's the thing. You don't know how visual atmospheric conditions will look at distance on a large flat plane unless you actually test a large flat plane of that size. So again, not your understanding. Hold on, let me finish. You're interrupting. You're not gonna know what to answer because you didn't hear the end. So don't tell me what your understanding is, because I have an understanding. A Sleeping Warrior has. We all have an understanding of stuff. That doesn't mean anything. Now, can you demonstrate in reality that on a flat plane the size of Earth, what you're saying is impossible is actually impossible? Or can you only assume it is so that you can believe the Earth is a ball?
We can assume it is if it is. We can demonstrate. Oh, what is that noise? Is that Brian again, or
is that you right hand?
Maybe, I don't know, but I'll go on mute. But don't let him avoid the question.
No, how do we know? Answer it, but you were filing something.
I'll tell it. I can have a go at this. So
no. Let he ask me. Let me answer it first, and then we're done. So the point is, in 3D, there are. We live in a three-dimensional world. We live in three-dimensional space.
Atmosphere. There's no atmosphere in this.
I could put atmosphere in if I want. I can put refraction in.
Put the inferior mirage in.
I can put refractions in. I can put water in.
Just put an inferior mirage in. So
wait a minute. No, just give me 2 seconds. Now, the important thing here, the experiment, is that no matter how close this gets, it stays on this center line. Now, we can see the ocean going away and moving up. We can actually see the ocean moving up. And we can see these ships, as it's just imagine that they're ships, moving away and getting smaller. Now, the most important thing about being 100 foot up and the top of this being 100 foot is if we look, it never leaves that 100 foot as it goes away. This is what perspective does. We have a convergence point at the center of the lens. So this already being at the center of the lens means everything goes up to that point. So if you Ranty, captured a ship where you were the same height, and you lined your lens up at the top of it, and then just time-lapsed it or whatever you do of it going away, it doesn't matter if it's hidden from the bottom up with mirage effects and all that kind of stuff, or the ocean even swells. The top of that should never leave that line until it goes away into the distance. I'll do it with this one. Until it gets so small that, you wouldn't be able to see it anymore, basically.
Okay, so let me address that.
And that's the experiment.
Let me address that. So let me know when you can see this image. It's probably going to take a couple of minutes to actually... Well, it's probably going to take about 30 seconds to appear on the...
You're not sharing it on Skype?
I'm not sharing it on Skype, no, not at the moment.
Whilst it's waiting for it to come up, let me ask Stingray this.
Can I? No, because I want to get this point out. So you can talk to him in a second. Trust me, Tony. Right. So I
am going to have to go in a second because I've got loads of work.
So here we have two boats. Here I am at an elevation.
Wait a minute. I'm not on the watch page. It looks like it's my. It looks. Wait a minute. I might have to refresh the watch page. Give me a second. Oh right, yeah. Now I've got it. Yeah.
Okay, so we have two boats. One's nearer, one's further away. Look where the inferior Mirage is on both. The further a boat, this is the boat that's furthest away. The big boat in the distance is further away, and the inferior Mirage is higher up than it. That proves that the inferior Mirage is an angle, right? Now, if that's an angle and it hides more of the bigger boat in the distance, what is eventually going to happen when you keep on increasing the size of the inferior Mirage on the boat that you've just demonstrated? So when you finally get to that boat that's 20 miles away and you have an inferior Mirage that's perhaps 100 foot deep, just on the size of its angle.
An inferior Mirage, you'd never get 100 foot of inferior Mirage.
Oh yes, you would. I've got 50 foot Mirages at 13 miles.
But wait a minute. Okay, so do it when there's little to no refraction.
Yeah, on this image, what you're looking at right now, the image that you're looking at right now, the boat in the distance was only 7 miles away, and this boat is 100 foot tall, and the majority of it is missing. And my elevation, believe it or not, from this distance, I shouldn't have had not a single drop of earth curve between myself and it. This was an atmospheric blockage, an atmospheric inferior Mirage that blocked out half of the boat. 50 feet of this boat was missing from a distance of just 7 miles away.
Oh no, I absolutely know that inferior mirages and refractions are a thing.
So you asked me.
I know that light bends. So I there's no dispute there. I don't know.
Dispute. Yeah. It shouldn't have bent. I shouldn't have had any. I should have just had a straight, clear line of sight at this boat in the distance. Same as the boat in the foreground, which was only about 4 miles.
Well, yeah, away. But refraction is light bending. So on days where there's refraction and heavy refraction, you get some amazing stuff.
So
if you look at the plain truth. Travis, he's got worse things than this, more extreme effects than this.
Let me just finish my final point. So the only time that we've ever had very clear days, myself and people like Red Pill Philosophy, when we have had clear days without any inferior Mirage or anything going on like that, we see shore to shore. Shore to shore. In fact, the only time that we get these inferior Mirages is when we start to see blockage. Right? So what you're asking is essentially an impossibility to actually do, because we don't get the conditions to do that. It's as simple as that. And when we do, we just see for an awful long way.
There are conditions where you can do that, and I've seen a lot of.
Not where I live. It's not where I live.
Well, yeah, I don't know. You Blackpool.
I am, but this location, the topography of the water in and around here is a depth of about 40 meters, and it's pretty constant all the way up to Ireland actually. But when you go down in the southern hemisphere, you just go a couple of miles out, and the drop off is not just 40 meters. You're talking 400 meters.
Yeah, no,
right? So that's why you get this
incredible
maybe
you can. Maybe.
Just let me finish. You get this incredible churning and dynamic of the water. It's very rough, that's why you get really deep swells. I actually put something up before. Let me see if I can bring it up. Rottnest swell report for Friday. This Friday, we're going to have a 4.9 meter swell in Rottnest Island. This Friday, right? So this entire location. It's renowned for these high swells, and it's not just in Rottnest Island, but it's all through Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, all the places where you seem to get these quote-unquote physical obstructions of the water is generally down to the fact that it's a very rough sea, very deep swells, a lot of shoaling going on, and a lot of wind-driven wave heights too to add on.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I would obviously say do this experiment away from severe atmospheric effects and severe, current effects that would perturb the water surface.
Okay. So who's next? Anyone wants to have a chat with?
But maybe yes, you're right. Maybe you can't do them where you are.
Anyone want to have a chat with Dean?
Yeah. Quick point. Dean, I'll share my screen so you can see it on Skype.
Oh, God. Wait a minute. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so do you believe and do you preach that light follows a curved trajectory in the atmosphere?
It depends on the severity of the...
All right, does light travel in a straight line in the atmosphere, or does it curve?
It depends. If it's hitting differential mediums and densities, it will obviously curve.
Okay.
Change direction is a more accurate description of it.
So would you say it's more curve or less curve, or would you say that it's wavy?
Wait a minute, I don't understand what you're saying now.
Right, so I'm asking, does the light travel in a straight line, or does it curve?
In standard atmospheric refraction, it would curve ever so slightly. Very, very slightly. Standard atmospheric. Refractive index 1.003, I think it is.
I'm going to present 2 scientific papers and then followed by some soundly footage that doesn't agree with what you've just said. First paper is the ballers hate these. These don't exist online anymore, so I can't provide links for them. Shouts outs to M. Scott Veach that got them deleted for some reason. But this one is titled Atmospheric Refraction, a Study of Mirage, by a load of people. And then it says in the description, Mathematics of Light Trajectory, it says, it is well known that Earth's atmosphere is not homogeneous. As a result, light travelling in the atmosphere will undergo refraction and the travelling path will deviate from a straight line. Is a deviation from a straight line a curve?
No, like I said, it bends. It will change direction. It's
deviate from straight?
Yes.
Is that a curve?
No, that's change of direction.
Yeah, is it deviate from straight? Is it a wave or is it a curve?
It actually depends on the medium and the makeup of the medium and the difference of the medium. In an inferior mirage, it's actually or Fata Morgana, it's curving upwards.
Curving, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, no, in standard atmospheric refraction, it's curving downwards. And then in some extreme circumstances, it can act like a wave. It depends.
It's all right. So you've said curve. That's the word I wanted from you, curve. This is a second paper from Science Direct. Talks about simulating the atmospheric phenomenon.
From me?
Huh?
I said it changes direction.
Yeah, but you used the word curve.
I said sometimes it can curve.
So these people based their simulation of this atmospheric thing on 3 main points. The first point was Fermat's principle, which yields the physically based description of the light path through a non-homogeneous medium with a continuously varying index of refraction. That means up as well as down, not just down, right?
No, not necessarily.
Great. So now that you've disagreed with that one,
I'm just saying you said something there which I believe is untrue.
Okay. So now real world demonstration from Soundly demonstrates, this is one of his time-lapse photography things that he did at Little Tensis Bayou. All I've done is I've put a straight line edge to this arrow that's translucent just to give a straight line. It's effectively a ruler. It doesn't matter what angle it's pointing at. It doesn't matter. It's not pointing at the light, just so happens to be in the image. It's just a straight line across the lights to basically give you a reference point to see what these lights are all doing. I will assert to you that all of these lights are independently acting in relation to each other, and they are not following a curved path. They are independently bouncing, sometimes above the line, sometimes below the line. But my point is they are deviating from straight up as well as down and not following a curved path in support of the 2 documents I've just presented to you, and you still maintain that they followed a curved path. In that context,
I said that it changes direction. I didn't say it follows a curve.
Yeah, curved. You used the word curved, and we can demonstrate
it can curve upwards, sideways, left to right, and that curve.
No, not curve. Not curve. Deviate from straight is the phrase that you need, not curve.
A curve is a deviation from straight. Yes.
No, this is a deviation from straight because they're bouncing up above and below the line, and they're not following a curve.
Don't get your point here. Light can bend.
It's more of a big dipper than a curve. You've got ups and downs, not just downs.
Yes, you can have columns of air doing this. I just previously mentioned, if you go look at the Plain Truth and Travis and his observations, the order of magnitude of what refraction does there is immense, and it throws light everywhere.
Why does it not say curve if curve is the way the light behaves? Why does it actually say deviate from straight, which means up as well as down and independently of each other?
It can curve up as well as down. A curve is just a description of a path.
Yeah, it's not talking about a curve though, is it?
Deviate from straight is a curve. It's a right angle. It's a wiggly line. It's a
Dean, it says, look, the atmosphere is a non-homogeneous medium with the properties varying continuously from point to point. It doesn't say following a curved trajectory. Varies.
Anthony, you're trying
it's not consistent with your claim of curving.
Words, and I'm not interested.
Yeah, it's not consistent with you describing it as a curve.
I didn't describe it as a curve.
You did use that word.
I said light will change direction.
Yeah, you said curve. That's what I picked you up on.
Curve can be up, left, right, down, or anywhere. It will
but it continuously varies from... Look.
Yes, it will continuously vary.
From point to point, yeah. So one point can go up, whereas the next point can go down, and then the next point can go back up again.
Yes, and I just pointed out to you.
Path.
And I just pointed out to you that if you look at the plain truth, who's a flat earther, and his observations, you can see extreme refraction, which fucking demonstrate this. I don't get what your point is.
The light does not follow a curved path.
It follows whatever the medium dictates. It can curve, bend anywhere.
Yeah, so why did you use the word curve when it should be varying continuously from point to point?
Because the difference between a curve and a curve that goes up, down, left, fucking right doesn't really matter.
So it doesn't matter a lot because it makes people think curve.
Deviation. I don't care what people think. I know curve has got no unit direction. A curve does not mean it's going to go down. A curve does not mean it goes up.
Curve never goes up, does it? Curve never goes up. It always goes down.
Does. You can curve stuff up. It's called convex. You really can.
How fast is that light traveling, Dean? And how much chance does it have to curve?
You're doing what Brenda did. You won't deny. Yeah, you deny, and you're wrong.
I've not disagreed with anything this paper said.
Yeah, light doesn't travel in a curved path. It deviates from straight. They're not the same.
So a curve isn't deviating from a straight line?
No, it's following a curved trajectory.
Yeah, but we call it a curve because light is going so fast, and when it deviates, it's gradual and mostly progressive. Oh yeah, no, that was a good one as well. Go back. That shows it exactly.
That's not showing a curved trajectory, is it?
No, it's distorting all over the place. That.
Yeah, but look at how the light bounces up and down.
Anthony, you're getting hung up on semantics. I use curve.
No. I'm saying that you're wrong to say that the light's following a curved path. It's not.
I never said that. I said it changes direction.
You used the word curve. Play it back and listen. You said curve.
Yes, you got me to say curve because it can curve.
I never got you to say curve. You're not triggered that like Brenda.
You were waiting for me to say curve. Jesus Christ, if this is the extent you're right.
You say curve. You say light bends in the atmosphere and it doesn't bend. It bounces from point to point, varying all the way through. It's a roller coaster.
Oh, wait a minute. So now what you're saying is when light... now I get your argument. You're saying that light that's what we call scatter coefficient. So the scatter coefficient of light is...
That's not what I'm saying. Let me do it into orthographic view because you obviously understand orthographic views, right? So
can I just say something to Ranty quickly? Sorry, Ranty, are you there? Sorry about this.
Brian, your mic sounds awesome now, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I put on a different headphones. Sorry about this, lads. Is Ranty there? Sorry, I just posted could be 1 or 4 photographs to your Skype. Would you mind sharing them on screen?
Okay, yeah, I will do in a minute.
Yeah.
I'll as a presentation.
When the lads are finished doing this.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, lads. Sorry about that. I got back on mute.
So this top one here, A, that's varying from point to point as it bounces above and below the straight line. This is a straight line. This is the curve that you tell people is 7/6R, or what I heard you saying recently that it should be 3/4. Is that right?
I don't know. I never said that.
Maybe it was the other guy that I get mixed up with you. But anyway, my point is that
Toadie.
when you're saying that it follows a curve, it's not. It's varying from point to point.
I said it changes direction. I will assert that light can change direction through mediums. It's what we call fucking refraction. End of story.
But let's not use the word curve. Let's use the word deviate from straight.
No, I said bends,
that is what it does.
Because bends can actually bend in any fucking direction, and it
up and down, not following a curve.
Anthony, do we have a pressure gradient? Yes or no?
A pressure gradient? No, we have a density gradient.
In the atmosphere, do we have a pressure gradient? Oh, density then.
The jury's out on it in a minute.
Go for it then. Do we have a density gradient in the atmosphere?
A density gradient, we do. Can't have that on a ball.
Is it dense at the bottom and less dense at the top?
Yeah, it is.
Does light change direction when it enters a dense medium?
Yeah, but it's not.
If I fire a ray from point A down to a point B on the ground, based on the different density change, what's that going to do?
Right, that only applies when it's a homogeneous medium.
Yes. No, that homogeneous is a gradient.
Hang on, you've interrupted. Let me answer. It only applies when there's a hard barrier between the two mediums, and we don't have that in the atmosphere.
Wait a minute. So you're saying light only bends in hard mediums?
There has to be. There has to be. Are you on about Snell's law here?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to have a hard barrier between the two.
You heard it here. Wait a minute. Let me take a timestamp of this. I actually want out of flat Earth, but I am actually just going to timestamp this. All right, 12 o'clock, that'll do. Yeah, no, that's cool. Carry on.
It requires a hard barrier between the two mediums.
No, you don't need to say. You just say it once. Now you're just looking like a dickhead. But just
carry
on if you want.
I'm telling you, we have a non-homogeneous non-isotropic
So I can't bend light through a gas. Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
I can't bend light through a gas.
Yeah, so when light bends through water...
No, yes or no? Can I bend light through a gas, Anthony? Yes or no?
Can you bend light through a gas? Not sure. But what I do know, when you say
gas isn't a hard surface, is it? So, given your previous statement, it would have to be
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but what I do know...
Walk back your previous statement, which was bullshit. I'll give you a chance to do that then.
Listen, is the water vapor from the evaporating surface water of the ocean, is water vapor more or less dense than the air that the water vapor sits in?
I'm not interested. I'm interested in your statement.
It's less dense and it's less dense and it'll bend the light up, not down.
I'm saying move away from that and just get a heavy gas or just get a temperature differential in the same fucking gas. How about that? No solid medium and you can bend light. And if you think that's not true, you need to do some research on that, my friend.
I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm saying I've never been asked it before, and I'll if I have to, I'll go away and look at it. But I don't know why you're picking up.
There's a brilliant experiment online that shows that a guy bends a laser round a barrel into a camera lens by just changing the temperature of the barrel.
Are you talking about? Is it the liquid nitrogen one?
Yeah, it's not the liquid nitrogen that's bending it, by the way. It's just the temperature differential.
So, I think I know you're on the.
And there's no solid thing that the light is hitting to change direction there.
Yeah, so if it's the temperature that's causing it, it's not the gas, then, is it?
Well, it's not just temperature. You can do it based on, like you said, densities. Temperature plays a part as well.
I can't remember the guy, but I think I know the video that you're on about.
Anyway, I'll let you go away and watch it because what you just said was plain wrong.
What, that water vapor is less dense than the air around it?
You need a hard surface to change the direction of light. That is absolutely incorrect.
Well, I asked you were you applying Snell's law, and Snell's law requires a hard barrier.
No, it does not. Snell's law relates to an index of refraction or a K value over distance to work out the incidence and the reflectance angles. It does not say, hey, fuck me, this needs to be a glass.
So where's the boundary then?
The boundary.
Are you looking on screen?
The boundary. No. Where are you? What are you doing?
Am I still screen sharing?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not on the conversation. Shit. Give me a second. Oh, now I can. Yeah, now I can.
So in the context of what you've just criticised, the gas change, and I said there needs to be a hard barrier between the two. The definition for Snell's law, just straightforward Snell's, that's all I've typed in. Mm-hmm. Snell's law, optics, relationship between the path taken by a ray of light in crossing the boundary. It has to have the boundary layer, otherwise you don't get your angle. So where would the boundary be in a gas?
It's progressive and linear.
Because Snell's law doesn't apply.
As is the temperature.
No, Snell's law doesn't apply. It's a different law that applies, not Snell's law in the atmosphere.
But anyway, you do not need a hard surface to bend or change the direction of light.
So you understand the meaning of the word boundary, do you?
I'm saying you don't need... I'm not going to get held up on a semantics argument or
you're
words.
Wrong. You need a hard barrier.
So you need a hard barrier to bend light, is your assertion?
I asked you
Anthony, just go back.
You were applying Snell's law, and you said you were.
Look, I'm saying Snell's law applies to it. Yes.
Okay, guys, let's listen to Pete. Let's listen to what Pete has to say.
No. I just wanted to say, if you just go back to what you quoted on Snell's law there, just on Dean's side. Here we go. Yeah. No, just the last page, the initial thing you were reading from. Here we go, yeah. So I think what the boundary is there, it says also, or the surface of separation between two contacting substances. So in the nitrogen example, the surface of separation would be the air, where the air meets the extent of the nitrogen. That's
yeah, but it has to be homogeneous and it has to be isotropic, and the atmosphere is neither. It's non-homogeneous and non-isotropic.
All right, well, this isn't necessarily just applying to the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, no, this applies to everything, but it doesn't. I get the fact that you say it's not a homogeneous system, and I get that it will perturb those rays, and it will not be a constant. Neither will it be progressive perfectly, because there will be no constant through it. But the assertion that you need a physical surface there is absolute utter bullshit.
It's not. Snell's law requires a hard surface change.
It does not require a hard surface change.
Yeah, it does.
To bend
literally,
light.
It says between the boundary, right? There is a physical boundary change. That's where
sake.
you get your angle. That's where you get your measured angle of incidence and reflection from.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I agree with Dean in the sense that it's not a hard and it doesn't say a hard and fast boundary, but there is a boundary because there is a movement between two distinct substances here.
The boundary is the division. Right? That's where you get your angle from. The boundary. If you haven't got a boundary, you haven't got anything to get your angle from.
And the boundary in nitrogen example would be where the nitrogen ends and the air begins.
Yes, Pete, you're absolutely right. Answered it really simply. You just need two areas. Doesn't matter whether it's two different substances. Doesn't matter whether there's a hard border or not. You need two different density areas that have distinct different index of refractions to them, and you will get a change in light direction. It's that simple. So something like argon gas versus carbon dioxide will have a different index of refraction, and you can look this up. And in Snell's law, you use IOR, index of refraction. It's that simple. Please, let's not get caught up on this, because I don't want to spend time on this.
It requires a change in medium.
Yeah, the change in medium can be different densities of either the same medium.
I don't think we're going to get any conclusions on this tonight. Would it be possible, Dean, for you to present your 10 revised questions, sort of like display it on your screen? Because I can't, like I said, I can't download the PDF, but if you could display that, I would much appreciate it.
Oh, wait a minute, give me a sec, because I really have to piss off. I've got loads of work to do still.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, as long as we can see it and we can take a screenshot of it. And then,
wait a minute, I said I'd email it to you anyway, so wait a minute, I'll just... you did send me your email, didn't you?
I did, yeah. ranty@rantyflyers.com.
Give me a second. I will...
I find it interesting that Cara Dean left, and along comes Stingray Dean to do the computers. Yeah, Cara Dean. Remember Cara Dean? She was all about the computers like you are, bring up the models and prove everything via that.
No.
You don't remember Cara Dean? Bullshit.
I remember her. She tried to demonstrate the summer solstice, I think. Oh no, was it the spring equinox rises due east for everybody? And when she demonstrated it on a model, it wasn't due east for everybody. And then I never saw her again. Shout out to Cara.
Well, yeah. Cara's very polite and very accommodating when it came to showing you put much time into models.
If this ends just like with Cara had a sex
when you didn't agree with her at the end, she turned
nasty. Very pissed off.
Let me just say, it's funny that both of you are Dean. I wonder if it's just a bat on.
Yeah, no, mate. If it ends in Cara Dean getting a sex change and swapping it round to Dean Cara, which is my name, I'm going to be very pissed off.
Nothing but surprise at this stage, man.
It isn't. My surname isn't Cara, by the way, just in case you fucking started thinking that. I'm mailing it to you now in a second.
Okay, cheers. Because I would like to get it up and see what the guys in the panel have got.
I've heard you get trouble getting it up, Ranty.
That's what Viagra's for, mate.
They're probably good questions as well, but of course, as flat earthers, we've completely deviated from the spinning ball earthers, so we'll be looking for answers in relation to reality. So I look forward to answering, not tonight, but a few of those questions are interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, these 10 questions are obviously some of the most important questions and beliefs as to why they think the flat earth is wrong, and that's why I want to see them. I want to see them and for people to discuss them. Because Nathan Oakley does his... and they're bandied around. So it's absolutely right that the Globers should have theirs as well.
Yeah. Wait a minute. These were just jotted down quickly, though. I need to go over and actually qualify them more. Like, yes, I know. Fuck off. I don't give a shit about English sometimes. I've got more important things to do than... No, yeah, well, based on interpretation, which you can have a huge variance in the fucking individual, yes, but...
Yeah, but thankfully we have dictionaries, that helps.
Sometimes.
And dicks, we got plenty of dicks to go
Oh,
with the
God, I knew that
dictionaries,
was...
right?
I predicted that in my own brain the second
You
you said that.
predicted it, did you?
Oh, my God, and I missed that one. Predicted. I should have just sent you it, Runter.
Yeah, I've got it. I'm just going to pop it up now.
We know the spinning ball is fantasy. We have to get back to the basic questions now. For instance,
Oh,
what
no,
is
I
light?
know.
Hang on, Dean. What is light? We have this carryover from the old ways of thinking that light has this dual nature. So, I mean, this is getting to, again, the heart of reality. And we shouldn't be spending too much time, I think, on the likes of Dean. We know he's going to defend a position till the cows come home because, well, that's what Dean does, right? But as I said, just to finish, I'd be interested in some of the questions anyway. And challenge
follow on from
myself.
Cara. Gotta follow on from Cara.
Damn, they want scientific evidence for Viagra working. I'm sorry, guys, but I can't show that. Right, I've got the housekeeping questions up on the watch page, so it should be up actually now because I put it up there about 30 seconds ago. So if you guys want to take a quick look, we have evidence of a lunar eclipse being possible on flat Earth.
Yeah, that just really quickly, that doesn't mean try and incorrectly interpret the inverse square law of light fall off and swap the burden of proof, Anthony. That means how can something cast shadows when they're apparently on the same kind of ecliptic at the same altitude?
Just come back to us when you've modelled it and failed.
Okay, is there any...
flip burden of proof then, yeah.
So
okay.
is there
it's
any
your claim.
Whoa, hang on, guys. Is there any of these...
This is evidence of a lunar eclipse on a flat Earth, not...
Yeah, but it doesn't work on your model.
Right,
it doesn't work on your model either.
Listen,
that isn't a claim.
Guys,
this is...
Shush.
Okay.
Please, look at the questions that you've put up, because I know you've got to go. Is there any there you want... Is there any there that you just want to say, okay, like question 5 or question 7?
All right, well, I'll just yeah, because like I say, these were all jotted down. I haven't done this. So wait a minute. By the way, you've got Gleam's answers on that as well, I think, at the bottom.
Okay.
So, in case you want to refer to that, so evidence of angular change of sun and moon over day. Yeah, that's fairly good. Do you understand 4, the sunset, moonrise?
No, can you explain
it? Yeah. To me, you see what this is? This is the prompt talking point. It's not really a hey. This is the absolute question. So basically, what it is if the sun is X distance above us, we could call that 2,000 miles. We could call it 20,000 miles. It doesn't actually matter. Now, with basic trigonometry, we can now plug in different sizes to what the sun could be based on that distance. So, like one of the flat Earth claims, if it's 3,500 miles high, it's 300 miles across, and we can work that out from just using a basic camera. If we assume that it's, if we've got a presupposition of 3,500 miles high, then looking straight up at it with a camera with a field of view of 1 degree, like on a P900 at like maximums, we can work out its size if we assume that distance. Now, what we need to do now with basic trig is figure out what would put that object on the horizon, on the last degree of the horizon. And if it is 3,500 miles high and it's 300 miles wide, it would need to go 200,000 miles away due to perspective to sit on the horizon. So that's what I mean by that one. That's how do we get sunrise, sunset if the figures that you're saying 3,500 miles high, is in there basically.
And what about number 6? What about number 6 as well? Just clarify that for us.
Rumpus. Wait a minute. I told Rumpus actually don't mention scales. So the first thing that he does when he says gravity is fucking scales, which is awesome. But no, there's an easier thing to try. Yeah.
Dean, just 2 quick questions for you. Literally 1-word answers.
Okay.
Do you think that scales are a force measuring device?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. That's Tony. No, it was just one question. I want to find out 6 and 7. I want to find out what.
All right, yeah. So a MEMS accelerometer is something that I work with day in, day out because I do mobile development and I work with VR and augmented reality. I need to know where your head's pointed, basically, and it does that via a micro-engineered, hermetically sealed chip. And these are physically manufactured, and these are actual engineering things. These are not a computer works this out. This is a physical object that's moving on a plate system inside a hermetically sealed chip. So what I would like Flat Earth to do is not invalidate, but explain to me how that is working. Yeah, I want an explanation for how a MEMS accelerometer works.
Okay, and finally, question 7: invalidate GPS satellites, orbital, and geostationary.
Sorry. So this should be the easy. I put this down because this should be fucking easy. You should be able to invalidate orbital satellites, as in the GPS network, by spending about £50 or like $70. And getting a radio receiver that can receive, I think it's 1200 to 1400 megahertz. All the GPS positional pings, we call them pings, are open source. So you can actually get free software to decode them, and then you can have radio receiving software where you can point at where this signal's coming from. Now, based on Doppler of that signal, you can work out that it is in fact where it says it is, and it's the altitude that it says it is. But more importantly, the timing signal from it allows you to triangulate with other orbiting satellites. Now, if these are up there, they can't be balloons or else GPS positioning breaks down. They have to be moving at a constant rate always and predictable, because you get what you call an orbital ID from them, and you get an altitude as well. So, and this is open source data. So if they're not there, you should be able to go out and invalidate this, or come up with a way whereby we're getting this data, because I can't think of any way. People say ground signal, and that just wouldn't work.
Can I say something there?
To that real quick?
Go. 1 second. I actually have a video.
Now, I just wanted to
I
go
have
through
a video, Dean, that shows a guy who's a captain of a ship, and that ship is putting underwater sea cables down for the internet. And he states that between the underwater sea cables and land towers, that covers 95% of communication and data in the world. So there's only 5% left. Go on,
I'm not about this position. I'm not on about communication. I'm not on about communication towers or anything. I'm on about
he said data. He said data and communication.
GPS satellites are not bidirectional data, so they're just.
Sure, GPS is data.
It is, but it's not. It's not bidirectional. There's no to and fro communication there. It's passive. So it's just like having a transmitter that you can't respond to.
Would you say that there's more towers now, let's just say land towers now, than there was back in the 1950s around the world?
Sorry, say that again.
Would you say there's a lot more land towers, communication land towers now, than there was back in the 1950s around the world?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Well, back when they first developed this GPS system, both the US and Soviet militaries, was back around 1950s into the early 1960s. So
I'm on about,
it improved
very
along with the amount of...
Very importantly, Brian, I'm on about the GPS satellites, not ground space or anything.
So you want us to disprove the satellites are up in the sky?
Yeah, you could do that by...
How do you disprove that, Dean?
Okay, I could do that.
Wait a minute. Let me just finish this point. So 7, the other thing that is easier to possibly disprove, because you only have to deal with one. It depends where you are. So in Europe, it would be the Astra 1 satellite.
Okay, you've been rambling. I'm going to deal with it right now. I know. You've been really hammering. So let me before you go any further. I know. Before you go any further. Okay, I know. Before you determine and tell me that GPS satellites are doing where you get your data, prove that orbital mechanics is possible and that a satellite can orbit a rock floating in space. Because if you can't prove that, then it doesn't matter anything else, because then it's not happening. So until you prove orbits, don't tell me satellites are orbits. So demonstrate that orbits are possible, and then I will believe you.
Okay, prove that aliens aren't sending those signals out.
No, well,
anyway,
here, this is your problem. No. See, this is your problem. This is your problem. So then you can leave. It doesn't matter. This is your problem. If you can't say it's not aliens, then you can't say it is satellites. That's your problem.
I'm not interested in this.
But I know you're not interested because you can't prove orbits. So you're not interested in proving hold on, let me finish. You have to prove orbits to prove satellites. You can't have satellites without orbits, right? So we don't need to talk about satellites. We don't need to talk about data. We'll go to the source. If orbits are impossible, satellites are impossible. So before you walk, crawl.
Sending the
don't say what. Once you go to what, you've
look,
conceded.
anyway.
Hold on. Wait. No, let me finish. Once you go to, well, then what is doing it? You've conceded that you don't have empirical proof and you only have data points.
Do you know what the altitude of a
No.
satellite is?
Demonstrate that orbits are possible, and then we will move on to what your data comes from.
Prove that orbital mechanics.
Exactly. So you're making a claim. You're making a claim that is unfalsifiable.
It's a human feat of engineering. Exactly. By hundreds of people. I can't prove it.
You can't prove it. Okay, so you admit you can't prove orbits. So why should we accept anything you say about orbital mechanics and satellites?
Well, no, we can prove that satellites are there.
No. You prove orbits. Don't prove satellites. Don't prove satellites. Prove orbits, which you said you can't. So if you can't prove orbits, you don't need to go further. We don't need to go further. We don't need.
I don't think.
No. You said you can't. You said you can't. So we don't need to go further on point 7 because you can't prove orbits. So point 7, scratch that one off. You now have 9 questions.
If point 7 scares you that much,
no, it doesn't scare me. Does orbit scare you?
Let me finish the second.
You don't need to go further because you don't have orbits.
Satellite.
You don't have satellites because you don't have orbits, Dean. Dean, you cannot make satellites without orbits.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Dean, you cannot make satellites without orbits. So if you're just going to whistle past the fact that you cannot demonstrate orbits, then the entire rest of your argument falls apart because you're saying I need orbits to have satellites. I can't prove orbits, but let's move on to the satellites doing what I can't prove.
I don't know enough about orbital mechanics.
Well, then drop it. Then drop that question because you don't know enough about the subject matter to properly demonstrate how it's happening. Then you can't prove orbits, and your question must be thrown out. And I can do this to you.
All right,
I will do this to you on every single question.
Shut up and listen.
I will do this to you on every. Oh, he's getting triggered. It's getting triggered. Is it getting triggered? This is what happens when they know they don't have an argument.
Right the hand. Okay. Give him a minute.
Let him have it.
Well, I'll give him a minute. Don't assume satellites are real without proving orbits.
That's his problem. Don't talk, and I can't. I'm not.
No, well, prove orbits. Prove orbits, because you're going to move on to satellites without proving orbits. That's my issue. My issue is that you're moving on to satellites. I know. I know I'm horrible. My issue is that you're moving on to satellites being real when you never demonstrated the fundamental properties of matter can actually do that.
I didn't demonstrate how we could fucking construct aluminum either.
But that's not under question. Orbits are under question. So you need to provide me with evidence that orbital mechanics are possible. Then we can drop he's getting so we can drop this is what happens when you hold their feet to the fire and you say prove the mechanics of what you're saying. He can't, so he starts attacking me. He knows he can't prove orbits. He knows he's basing satellites on something he cannot prove and cannot demonstrate in reality, so he needs to attack me.
Should know everything.
Clearly.
Yes, no.
Well, if you go now, he's going to say, I know I can't prove it, but it's because I don't know enough. That's his argument.
I'm saying
his argument is now I don't know enough.
I'm not.
Well, then don't claim that you know enough to say that GPS is satellites. If you don't know, here's the problem, Dean. If you admit you don't know enough about orbits, to explain it, hold on, let me just finish this. If you admit you don't know enough about orbits to explain and demonstrate it, don't tell me that orbits are what's giving satellites, because by your own admission, you know nothing about the topic.
Okie dokie, right. So that's question 7.
Let me just finish the second. No, it isn't. Let me just explain the second bit of question 7 because
it doesn't matter. You have to assume orbits.
It's easier
Let him finish.
Let him finish. Do. Yeah. So I've got a satellite dish on my house, and it points to the Astra 1 satellite for receiving Sky TV here in Europe, but it could be anywhere. Now in the States, what's amazing is you have big RVs that have portable satellite receivers on, and due to their location using the GPS network, they orientate themselves to where the source of the signal coming up from the sky. But they've also got Doppler readout, so you can actually determine where that signal's coming from. So it's demonstrate that the signal isn't coming from there somehow, and that it is being bounced. That's what these are basically. They're not I want to demonstrate orbital mechanics to you or how aluminium fucking is made. It's I just want you to be aware that media satellites are something that we all use. There needs to be a damn good explanation for they're not 89,000 miles up there. They're in fact either, they're bouncing it from the ground or the bending signals or something like that.
Dean.
Wait a minute, really quickly. Is there anything else on this list that you want me to clarify?
Very lastly, just a more concise explanation / question for number 3, which is evidence of angular change of sun / moon 50% one day.
Oh right, yeah. So basically, I think it was Anthony and Dave Marsh. I think it was. They gave me some images of the sun. Is it Dave Marsh? I think it is.
Dave Marsh it is.
Yeah. And I saw no discernible size change in the sun from. He took 3 sun images, one from overhead, one at just past midday, and then one at sunset. And there was no sort of like uniform scale size due to perspective there, which means there's a problem in saying that it's local, as in 3,000 miles away and 300 miles wide, because we would expect it to change, and this was conservative, 50%. It would change, it would change to be less than 50%. I just put 50% there because, it's easy figure. I think it worked out at something like 38 something or some bollocks. But in a day, 38, it'd go down and decrease at least half the size of the sun. Now, Dave Marsh has done it with a solar filter, which is brilliant, because you get to see the surface of very close to the surface of the sun. And there's no size change there. You need to prove that the sun is actually changing size as it comes over.
Wolfie proved it. Sorry, Randy. Wolfie proved it. Wolfie's video proves it. The sun changes size with his solar filter, and so did Chris Van Matry.
I
haven't seen them, and have you got a link?
I think they did. Yeah. But the whole point of this is what you and your friends over on the Globe side believe are the 10 questions that flat earthers need to answer because they're the most important questions. Yeah.
In order of magnitude, yeah. They were arranged.
Very poor questions, man. They're very, very professional.
Okay. Right. Well, thanks for presenting them, and I'm sure we're just going to have a bash at trying to sort these out now.
And I will revise these over time, because, like I say,
What do you mean? You're not going to revise them once we've answered them, are you?
No. Well, if they need clearing up, if they need clearing up. So if you look at number 2 now, occluded by physical things, or being obscured from the bottom up.
So was that
occluded by physical?
So wait a minute. So was that because yesterday I did a presentation that answered the first try of this, then Tony did a presentation that answered when you did it again. And
you did it with angular. You said it got too far away, you won't be able to see it, and I thought, oh shit! I thought you would just assume that we'd always be able to see it. Okay, fair enough. It's so big you can't just see it, or you zoomed in too much. That's why I put the size thing there, so the Rayleigh criterion doesn't come into it. And then Anthony said about the distortions and the kind of blurriness that became the bottom, and I'm there like, oh shit, okay. So it needs physical obstruction, because that's the thing that we see on an ocean. We see the physical obstruction of something. We see the physical obstruction of land.
No, we don't know.
The buildings are dropped down behind the land.
That's not true.
The physical obstruction of the ocean.
We don't see physical obstruction. We see mirage.
We do see mirages, but I'm saying that physical obstruction is there.
No, but Dean, we explained the physical obstruction earlier to you.
Well, first of all,
Randy talked about the boat only being 11 miles away.
You're saying you've explained it, so.
Well, the one from Rottnest Island. I mean, you have to take all those things into account. I mean, if you're not taking even the wake of the ships into account, which would be a very wide
so now
swell.
It is obstructed.
Well, you're going to be obstructed. Water is physical, so you're going to be obstructed by water. But the thing about it is that you have to take everything into account. You can't just go that occur straight away. That doesn't work. You have to take all the other elements into account. If you're not even taking the wake of the ships into account, I mean, that's something that has to be taken into account. Randy showed you it was only 11 miles away. It couldn't be hiding 50, 60 foot with 11 miles away.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's absolutely fine if you want to take all that into account. But the weird thing for the globe side is that it matches up predominantly, give or take, varying refraction.
Does it match 8 inches per mile squared?
No, it doesn't.
No.
Well, that's the problem.
I'm not interested in 8 inches. I actually don't know anything about the 8 inches per mile squared. I know
Pythagoras.
I know that there is 1 degree of curvature over 69 miles, and that's what I do my models on. I don't. I can't create a
drop. Then
that's not even true. There's no evidence to support that assertion is true.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, that's 1 degree every 69 miles. I'd like to see the evidence that shows that there is 1 degree every 69 miles of traverse.
What if that curvature applies
model.
to the curvature of the sky? Have you considered that, Anthony?
Pardon?
What if that curvature that they give us in terms of the spherical coordinate system applies to the curvature of the sky itself, or the barrier?
Well, we know that it doesn't apply to the curvature of the Earth because the stars slow down as they get to the horizon, and that destroys his argument that they travel at 1 degree every 69 miles. They don't.
Well, absolutely.
No, wait a minute. Really quickly, I just want to answer that because that's another thing that I found in Dave Masher's photos. So for full disclosure, the sun, and I got, well, first of all, I didn't know that it would affect it this magnitude, but in those 3 images, Anthony, the last one, which was at the horizon, the sun differed in vertical size, not in lateral, so not left to right, but in vertical size, about 4% or 5%. And it's because it's being compressed by the horizon because of the layers of atmosphere that you're looking through.
It's the mirrored water layer, bud.
Well, whatever you want to call it, but
yeah, the water that's reflective that you're looking at over an extended plane, the mirrored water layer.
Okay, Pete. Okay, but the point there is because of that compression, stars will seem to slow down the more atmosphere that you're looking through, because standard atmospheric refraction bends things upwards. So when you have the compression effect, things seem to slow down, and that is absolutely what is expected.
It's called the astronomical horizon, right, Dean? They don't measure. This is why it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. In ships,
right.
But so
because they notice the distinction between because they notice the distinction between the apparent horizon and the real horizon, or the astronomical horizon.
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do there is just to simply disregard the 15 degrees, so that you're not looking.
That's the mirrored water layer, bud.
So that you're not looking through that amount of refraction and distortion.
Yeah. Just need to give a massive shout out to Paige, who I'm going to mod Sleeping Warrior just for the evening, because Paige has asked very nicely. She says, "I think Sleeping Warrior wants a wrench too ranty. Dean needs to have his questions perfect before we start answering them. No moving the globe posts." Thank you very much, Paige, for the massive $79.99 super chat. Thank you very much.
Just for the evening.
Nice, Randy. Very profitable, bud.
Well, Anthony, if you leave really quickly after you've got the wrench, I don't think you can take it away. Oh no, you can.
Let me ask Dean just a quick question. I've asked many ballers, and I get a very similar answer. What's the best argument for you, Dean? The most convincing, persuasive argument that the flat earthers, which are more and more of them as days go by, have to offer?
What's the most convincing argument?
Yeah. Ooh. Well, let me just tell you while you're thinking of that. The answer I usually get from people like you is...
Wait a minute, don't give me an answer.
That's stupid. They have no answer, no argument whatsoever.
All right, they don't give an answer.
No, they say that I can't think of one. There's no answer.
No. I'm thinking what's the best one, because there's always a best one. It doesn't matter whether it's fucking believable to me or not. There is one.
No, for you.
That is the most believable.
It's not about believable. So if you're well, off you go. I'll leave you answer.
Well,
gas pressure without a container and a force.
No.
What do you mean no? It's a black and white slam dunk.
No,
what about no curvature observed, no matter what height you go?
Well, I don't know. There's the European Space Agency has taken a lot of fucking photos of
outside of
the Earth that's got a curve.
Outside of things we can't really do for ourselves.
We can see the ISS up there, so yeah.
Okay.
We can look from the ISS. So it wouldn't be to do with space, because if I thought the Earth was flat, the problem is I'd still have to think there is space because there's overwhelming evidence of the
No,
ISS.
No, you wouldn't. You'd suspend your belief in that, and you'd say, okay, let's assume
there's too much evidence on that.
You should be all over NASA hoaxery with your expertise in graphics, etc. But you're not. So it's a simple question.
Hang on. When we
answer that flat earthers are dumbasses, and they have no good points or good arguments whatsoever.
No. So in answer to your question, I think the extraordinarily long observations that shouldn't be possible by an extreme magnitude. I'm pretty sure that I've seen about 4 or 5 where I've thought, wow, this is really, really fucking weird.
Excellent.
Wait a minute, I don't know what you just said then. I think your mic's fucked.
No, that's because that's the starting observation that puts most of us on the pathway to sort of flat Earth and beyond. So have you worked them through in your brain and
well, yeah. So a year and a half ago, I know, Pete, in contradiction to what you might think. Well, you might think I'm paid to come on here and all that bollocks, but you also think that I've been in this a long fucking time.
I know you have.
Well, the point is, a year and a half ago, I went on to Nathan's show, and that was the first time I ever gave a shit about anything flat Earth, and I didn't go on there to think, hey, in fact, believe it or not, I don't know whether you remember this, Anthony, but you asked me a question when I was on there. You said, why are you here then? And I said, because I knew that Nathan would shout at me and get me agitated, swear at me, and treat me like shit, and I wanted to see how I'd react, and that is the only reason I went on there. And then
we also asked you.
Wait a minute. I never gave a shit beyond that. Oh yeah, go on.
We also asked you, why was it when you modelled Ranty's horizon picture of, I think it was Barrow, where all the buildings should be behind the curve of the Earth, and you demonstrated it, that you couldn't model it, and when we asked you why was that, and your answer was, I don't know.
Interesting. I said, I don't know. That's interesting. But the thing is, that to me is a completely legitimate response to something that I don't know. But what did I get from Nathan at that? Swearing and abuse.
But you knew you were going to get that, and you went on there to see how you'd react. So how did you react yourself, Dean? It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant when you're being abused by Nathan, right?
Yeah, score out of 100 on how I reacted. 65. How wound up it got me, or how I mentally got affected. I'd say I scored about 65, 70. So I didn't do that bad in how it affected.
I would say you did better. I heard that show. You actually handled it pretty good.
Well, yeah, it was more about. It was less about my, how I was projecting. It was more about how I was feeling. And
you were clearly putting on a facade, though, Dean, as well.
No, that's what I said. I will have been projecting a better impression than what I was feeling. It's exactly what I just fucking said, Pink.
Okay. Missed that.
Could I ask
you were acting your part.
Oh no, but anyway, Pete. No, in answer, this was to you, and then I didn't give a shit about flat Earth because I went on there. I was more interested in religious debating, but only listening to it in the background. And then I didn't give a shit for about a year, and then for some reason I was looking at some science thing, and it came across conspiracy cats, and then I remembered that someone called me, and I think it was you, Anthony. You said you called me a name because I called you Anthony because someone else had called you Anthony, and you said, "Oh, are you this fellow?" And I'm like, "No." Well, how do you know my name then? Someone else just did it, and I think it was. Is it Cat Earth or something? You thought I was Cat Earth or something. So this conspiracy cats video came up, and then he mentioned Jose's show. So I listened to Jose's show a few times, and then just decided to go on about 4 months ago. But to be honest, I think I'm done with it all now.
Yeah, I think you're done with it because you couldn't model Ranty's observation of Barrow.
Before you began,
wait a minute. Just to retort to that, Anthony. Back then, I never believed that refraction could be responsible for pulling something up like that.
Yeah, it can't.
But now when I look
there's
back
no
at
evidence
it,
of looming, dude. Come on.
Listen. Now when I look back at it, I know that what I'm looking at now is not reality because there were no straight lines on that observation and everything was wavy. That is not how they build buildings.
It was 1 foot above the water, Dean.
No, I'm saying I know that we were looking at. No, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying I know those buildings that we were looking at were wavy and there were no straight lines, and that is not how you build buildings. Therefore, I am not looking at reality.
You're looking at distortion through the atmosphere, right, Dean?
Yeah, but sorry, Pete. The camera height is 1 foot above the water. You can't not have the waviness between the camera and the buildings. You can't not have the buildings looking slightly like that. If you're only 1 foot above the water, that would be where the most atmosphere would be. The thickest of atmosphere.
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing, Brian. Back then, when I looked at that, even though I was a 3D artist, I'm not a 3D artist anymore, by the way. But back then, I was still a 3D artist, I think. Oh no, I wasn't. But anyway, the point is, I was using refraction all the time in material simulation. I never actually really understood what it was, nor did I know the magnitudes that we get through the atmosphere. Whereas now I do.
How could you prove that is refraction, that refraction can be doing that? Because we have never been able to find any proof whatsoever that a whole land system and buildings and everything can be lifted up from that far beyond the curve.
You can work it out on a small scale.
Yeah, but that's
you
not...
can model it.
Yeah, but that's not
in physical reality, Pete, is what I'm saying, not on a
Hold on, I got it. No, you can't. You cannot model in physical reality water sticking to a ball and then you seeing an object on that ball that the water evenly stuck to being blocked by the curve of that water. You cannot model that in reality because water doesn't stick to a ball. Right. You can only assume it does when you scale up the Earth to a size that we can never test. Okay, so here, but this is what I need to say. When you talk about what you're trying to prove, okay, prove is a belief. When you believe something, that's on you. Now, I can't have your belief, but I can listen to your explanation. So what you do is explain what you believe is happening, and then the individual chooses, did you prove that or did you not prove it? And when you say that a boat disappears bottom first because it's curving down and under our feet to the point where it's hanging upside down and directly underneath us, that explanation defies reality. So it doesn't matter how good you can match up a mountain disappearing in reality to curvature of a fake planet floating in space, because you can't validate the explanation with reality. So we throw it out. Right. You cannot. Do you get what I'm saying? You can't model this in reality. You can't make this stuff happen. This is imagination zone. And when you come down to it, all you have is your explanation for why you think a boat disappears bottom first. And that explanation includes a ball floating in space with water stuck to us and a boat going down and around and under our feet and hanging upside down. You can't disconnect what you're saying from that reality of the explanation. And that is horse junk. So your rest of your explanation is connected to horse junk.
And what I've been saying for the longest of times, everything to do with a spinning ball is a million exercise in thought experiment with other fantasy.
Start that again, Pete.
I said everything. Can you hear me? Everything to do with a spinning ball.
Yeah, no, I add it on mute every time Dickhead speaks.
Everything, just to paraphrase what Right the Hand was saying, everything to do with a spinning ball is an exercise in thought experiment. It's mere fantasy. There's no basis in reality. We can throw it out, but we can hang on to it as well and see what we can glean from it, because we recognize that the lie is built on the truth. That clear divide is there, isn't it? Let me just say that clear divide is there. There's no bridging any gap between ball earthers and flat earthers at this stage. All you can do as a flat earther is to sort of strengthen your own knowledge and understanding of your reality based on what isn't, right? And we know what isn't.
Dean, have you got, by any chance, before you go, I know you must want to go at this stage, have you got any photographs that you could share in the chat? I'll share two videos on that on the sun getting smaller with solar filters thing in the chat for you. Have you got any photographs?
Oh, which chat? In this Skype chat? Sorry.
Yeah, in this one. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for photographs because I was looking for these photographs of the inside of a MEMS accelerometer in a phone.
Oh yeah.
All I could find was two things. I found diagrams that showed moving parts. And then when I did find what was supposed to be two different photographs, supposedly, I had to search to find the inside. what was supposedly the inside of these accelerometers, it didn't show any moving parts. So it's circuits and transistors.
Oh no! So it will show moving. It won't show you them moving, but you can see the plates and how they move, and it works on proximity capacitance. So if they didn't move, it wouldn't work. But they are micro-engineered little struts that allow multiple axes to move around in the structures that you see. I'll find you one.
Yeah, some details on the creation of them. So
I've seen some amazing photography on them.
You know what I actually always thought? I actually thought that the phone was using the camera lens, and that made sense to me with the earthquake, with the accelerometers able to detect an earthquake, that it was using the camera lens.
Well, no, 2D point tracking and plane tracking through a camera requires a lot of brute force CPU power, so you'd never be able to constantly do that. That's how augmented reality works, but not how you would detect the phone's motion. Because the problem is, because the phone's motion, we're only good enough, or I'm only good enough, and I'm pretty good at augmented reality stuff. I'm only, the systems that I use and the software that I use is only good enough to detect multiple planar surfaces. So I can detect the floor, a desk, a wall. What I can't detect is the sand. When you're walking on a beach, I can't detect grass if there's hills. So at that point, you just lose orientation of the phone completely because it can't determine what is flat and what it's aligned to. So.
Yeah, but how rather than going into a big thing about it now, remember the question I asked you, how do you correlate that the accelerometer is detecting gravity but also able to detect an earthquake? They're two separate things.
Yeah.
One is supposedly a force.
So all it does is it detects acceleration in all three axes. There you go.
So the X, the Y, and the Z axis.
Yes.
But that's not how gravity works.
Gravity manifests as an acceleration in the Y direction.
No, it doesn't.
Well, according to a MEMS accelerometer, that's why it's on the list.
Yeah, but now you're going to think the space-time bending, and then we're going to ask you to prove that, and then you'll get into it's a concept, and then we'll get into concepts can't affect reality, and then you're stuck holding your willy because you have this acceleration without a force, and which is the concept that can't affect it. So do you want to do this?
This is probably nice, don't it?
Yeah, this is nails in the coffin bit. This is one of those arguments that you should be listening to, Dean, and then ignoring.
This is the one
MEMS accelerometer? Or the argument that he's just assigned me?
No, the one where you claim that gravity manifests itself as a force in our 3D world. It doesn't.
Okay, fine. Tell me what this thing's detecting then. That'd be awesome.
No. You tried to prove something with a machine, and when we pulled you out, then you now asked us what we think, which means you didn't prove anything with the machine.
Now, this MEMS accelerometer detects acceleration in three axes at a standing sense. It will detect a magnitude because it's calibrated to 9.8 in a direction. That direction is negative Y.
So hang on, Dean. So are you saying you just have to place the accelerometer on the ground and you get a reading of 9.18 meters per second squared?
Yeah, 9. Yeah.
Even though nothing is happening.
Correct. And if you rotate it slightly, So
that could be zero. That could be. In other words, that could be calibrated to zero, right?
It could, but then the other two would be positive 9.8, which would negate that. What would happen is imagine. Just hold your finger. So the way that you
we got to do imagination hour now.
So three axes. If one of those axes has a magnitude, you could zero that out, but then the other two need to account for that because the other two have got no force on them. It's only one that's got it. So if you make the resting point of the one that's got force on it 0, then the others show negative what that was. So that when they're rotated round, then they become 0.
What's the mechanism that's pulling? What is the mechanism that is from the Earth or gravity that is affecting the whatever meter? What is happening? To explain the physical, if there is one, interactions going on that make the meter do what it's doing.
You just have a resting on the table. So what's happening there, Dean, that you're getting a reading of 9.81 meters per second square?
So in the hermetically sealed chip, a capacitance plate is actually moving closer, but not touching, obviously, to a sensor read strip, which is just measuring voltage, measuring current, and that changes, but it's built in this micro-engineered meshy kind of structure. I'll get you exactly.
Why is it moving closer?
Why
is it moving closer?
Go on,
Can I just say one thing about it there? If you have a sensors, let's say around, I'm just going to do a visual, around in a square, and you have a small piece in the center of that is like a square or a rectangle, and when the phone is upright, that is obviously going to be down towards the bottom. When you turn it sideways, it's going to be falling to the side. But that's just a moving part and sensors. That's not proof of gravity.
Right. Absolutely.
Sorry, say that again, Brian.
Are actually,
I didn't actually. I weren't following the train of thought there.
Well, if you have sensors all around, let's just say a rectangular piece, right? A very tiny rectangular piece, and you have very small sensors all around it inside in the accelerometer chip. Mm-hmm. When your phone is upright, let's just say, and that moving piece is down toward resting down towards the sensors, right? That on the bottom. When you turn it sideways, it falls sideways, which then affects the sensors on the side. You turn it upside down, affects the sensors on the top. You turn it the other way, it affects the sensors on the other side. That's just a moving part of sensors. Sorry, Randy, I just.
That's fine.
One last thing, that moving part is denser than the air around it, so it's
absolutely.
Sorry, Randy.
I just have a question. Somebody from Mark Collard from the chat asking if these accelerometers work inside a Faraday cage. Ask if they ever tried it, and if so, if it worked.
I have actually. We had to build a radio cage inhibitor, an EM inhibitor, when I was testing GPS satellite receivers for logistics transport. I never thought to test the accelerometer, but I would. So the answer is, I've tested GPS satellites inside this because we needed to cut them off, but I've never tested the phone, the device's accelerometer inside.
So let me just because something's after what Brian was saying there. So you have two cement blocks, right, standing upright underground, connected at the very centers via a piece of wood, and just where those connection points are to the blocks, we have pressure sensors. Now, if both of them are standing upright, right, you'll have no reading on the sensors. But if you put one block on the ground and the other above it, right, vertically, then you're going to change the pressure relationship, and you're going to have this reading on the sensor. So, but let me just ask you something as well. So, were the MEMS accelerometers calibrated in a zero gravity environment?
Yes, hermetically sealed chip. So
how can that be zero gravity environment? Isn't everything Earth?
Oh no. That 9.8 is irrelevant. You could unitize it to 1. You could do anything you want with it, but it just measures a magnitude of a force. But it's relative. You don't care what number that is, so long as it's always relational to the other axes. But I've just posted a brilliant thing for you, Brian, in the because the iPhone 4, I didn't know this actually, but the iPhone 4 was the first one to introduce them. But it's got some really cool photography of the inside of it and what's going on, and it explains to you how it works as well.
Did the iPhone 3 not do the same thing?
I can't remember.
I thought the iPhone 3 did the same.
Well,
maybe. No,
I know what it was. So the iPhone 3, because there's a whole host of sensors in a phone. You've got a digital gyroscope, you've got a magnetometer, you've got a compass, you've got GPS receiving, you've got an accelerometer. So you've got all these hosts of things. They had a digital compass and gyroscope, a basic gyroscope based on something else, not a MEMS accelerometer in the iPhone 3. So you could still do little things with it, but not to the degree that the MEMS accelerometer. And Bosch are probably the biggest manufacturer of those chips as well. If anybody...
Yeah, I'm going to look into them, because I was looking into them a while ago and I couldn't find what the diagrams were showing me. The diagrams are showing me all these moving parts. Then when I go to look at it, that's not what I'm seeing. That kind of...
Oh yeah,
but the moving parts make sense to me now.
Yeah, the diagrams are just the layman's things, but if you look at the structure of this on some of the photos, it's absolutely amazing how these are constructed.
Oh, it is absolutely amazing how they do it. I agree with that. How they do it. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, and at the end, but the problem is at the end of the day, if you're claiming that gravity is the reason for this downward force, you're going to have to explain what and how is pulling on that machine. Okay, so your first option is it's the mass of the Earth. And then I'll ask you how. I'll say, how is the mass of the Earth affecting physical reality to create that force? Explain the mechanism to me. And then if you say space-time, I will do the exact same thing. So how do you get away from having to explain in detail the mechanism which affects this machine without having to explain how mass physically attracts other mass through no physical attraction, or with explaining space-time? And that's like all we should. That's all we should be talking about. Like there doesn't, because everything else is just a tug of war. If you say that this is what's happening, then explain the mechanisms in detail and have it make sense. But if the only way you can explain a boat disappearing bottom first is that, well, it's curving underneath our feet, that doesn't count. That's horseshit. That's a shitty explanation that doesn't make sense in reality and doesn't fit. So if you want to say that you have this gravimeter that senses force, a force needs acceleration, and to accelerate an object, you have to have a physical touch to that object. You can't accelerate something through no physical mechanism. So if you're saying that the Earth is physically affecting this machine, explain the physical mechanism that's doing it.
I think Dean said he goes on mute when you're speaking for some reason.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be me that asked this question. This should be the question that everybody just asks, and we just go, okay.
I would ask the question.
We'll just be, okay, great, and then just ask it again. So
yeah,
this is how I triggered Brenda. This is how I triggered Rumpus. This is how you do it. They cannot answer this question.
Yeah, but the thing is, they'll be back defending the same position the next time, and I have said that for the longest of time. There's no point in dealing with these people anymore. We know what isn't. Now we have to deal with what is, and I think a big question here is gravity itself. Now, the question I would ask Dean is, how can you be so sure that it's a pulling force from below and not a pushing force from above if we accept there is some sort of an influencing factor? That's an important thing.
But hang on. That question's been answered by Einstein, who said that gravity is not a force. So why would you ask that question anyway?
Yeah, but gravity. Einstein is a tranny. He was married to a butch woman. We know that he is a fabricated character.
Einstein was a tranny, did you just say?
Even Martin Leakey said it as well, bud. His wife was a butch man in drag. But the point is, Einstein is a character, and you control everything he gives you, right? Or else you can look for clues. Because, as I said, I didn't say it here, I hold that the true nature of her reality is known, and everything that's presented to us is based on the truth. So the lie is given to us and fashioned on the truth, so we have to go. And Anthony, I know you have discarded gravity. I think that's a foolish thing to do, but that's for a different discussion. And I'm talking about gravity as in some sort of impulse force or some sort of pushing force coming from somewhere. That's a different matter, though. We can talk about that at some other time.
If Dean is still there, I don't know if he is, but relative density would totally explain the MEMS accelerometer.
Right.
Yeah, but relative density wouldn't explain the disorganization in a parabolic dive.
Yeah, it would. You're talking about on the Vomit comet.
Yeah. Or anything in a
but the Vomit comet, for a start, they were shaking that up as much as they could. Secondly, what they should have done is release those things out of that jar that they had today. And then you would have seen whether they would have organized themselves or not. Because the way they were, they kept on trying to reorganize themselves and they weren't being allowed.
You've not seen the same video that I've seen then, because he just holds it as still as he can.
It doesn't. He shakes it up. So once the things are stuck in that small container, Dean, they can't reorganize themselves in time to get
the point is that organization required a force. I don't care what you call it, but it was a downward force that organized them in a nice structured manner.
All
now
right, so
that
how come I would do that
let me
whole
just
thing
finish.
different then, Dean?
Now that
Why is it a
parabolic
down
dive,
force and not an upward?
that parabolic dive took away its organisation ability. So it took away the force that was allowing them to organise in that way. And
There's
that's
no force that's allowing them to do it. Einstein said so. Stop saying a force.
the gravitational force is the force.
What are you on about? Are you contrasting gravitational force from the word force?
No, I'm saying that the theory of gravity includes the gravitational force, which is a force.
The theory of gravity includes the gravitational force, which is a force.
Yeah, the current understanding and the theory of gravity includes bending of space-time and all this kind of stuff, and field equations from Einstein. However, contained within all of these theories, including time dilation, is the gravitational force, which is a measurable force here on Earth.
Can I just intersect?
What's it measuring?
Whoa, can I just intersect and say that we've had a super chat to say, well done guys, civil discourse. Thanks Ranty from Aaron Moorfield, $100. Thank you very, very, very much.
Fucking hell, this is a profitable business, right? A profitable venture, bro.
Jesus, yeah. Wait a minute, you got a 330. Oh, that was actually a bad number, wasn't it? 333.33. Wait a minute. That's not a good number.
333.
Dean, let me go back to my question before that Ranty hijacked.
Who gave you that? Oh, Sam Hine. Shout out to Manny.
If I asked you before if you thought that scales were a force meter, and you answered yes.
Yes.
The next question that Ranty stopped me from asking because he wanted to speak himself, but I wanted to answer it, is if Einstein says that gravity is not a force, but if you stand on a set of scales, bearing in mind Rumper says that mass is not a force, weight is a force, the maths for weight is mass times little g. But we know little g is not a force. So if
little g in my world is the gravitational force.
Yeah, but Einstein said it's not.
Einstein said gravity is not a force. I'm on about the gravitational force. That's a force.
The gravitational force. You on about the acceleration due to Earth's gravity?
I'm on about the manifestation of an accelerating force that we commonly see pointing down. I refer to as the gravitational force. Just like in magnetics, you don't say magnetics is a force, but there is the magnetic force.
But
that
respectfully,
is a force.
though, in the mathematics, it's mass times gravitation, little g, gravitational attraction, right? The velocity caused by Earth's gravitation. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Acceleration, yeah.
Yeah. So but that's the bit that makes it the force. But Einstein said that gravity is not a force. So if you remove the little g from it,
gravity is you can't remove the little g from it, or else you've got nothing.
Well, you've got mass. You've got mass. You're left with weight is mass times little g, right? So
mass doesn't equal weight because you can change the weight of a mass.
Yeah, that's right. But if part of the mass is little g and gravity is not a force, that means that you're left with just the mass.
The gravitational force is a force. G refers to the constant of the gravitational force. It doesn't relate
that's
to
big G.
the theory
I'm on about little g. I'm on about the acceleration.
The attraction between. All right, okay.
Yeah, so if weight is mass times mass times little g, and scales are a force measuring device, but we know the little g bit's not a force, that means you're left with just the mass.
Yeah, but the way that you figure out is something a force meter is, does it react when I apply a force?
Right.
And unfortunately, I can hold the scales up and I can push them together in my hand, and that registers a force.
All right, you're obfuscating my point. If the scales get a force on them, they react with a number, correct?
Yes. A relational number based on Newton force, yes.
So when the mass gets put on it, Rumpus says mass is not a force. But when weight is put on it, which is mass times little g...
No, wait a minute. You can't say, oh, I'm going to put mass on this and then I'm going to put weight. That's a fucking ridiculous thing to say. You do know that, right?
So if I stand on it and my mass gives a number...
Your mass,
we know that the acceleration...
of gravity is causing your weight.
Please, we know that the acceleration due to Earth's gravity is not a force, so we're only mathematically left with the mass.
The gravitational force is a force. Stop trying to strawman me.
I'm not understanding why you're distinguishing. Where am I getting this bit wrong? So you're distinguishing between the force of gravity
Gravity is, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, a theory that describes a lot of things. One of those is mass attracting mass, which presents in a gravitational force. The theory says it's bending space-time in Einstein's stuff. Oh, wait a minute. No, shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Siri. Piece of shit. So yeah, she never answers questions when I actually want her to fucking speak. Yeah, so contained within
Siri
the
if the Earth is
Talk to your
flat?
girlfriend like that, Dean.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's do this.
Ask her if the Earth is flat.
Wait a minute. Hey Siri, oh no, my speaker's going to say that. Wait a minute. I'll have to trigger it in my hand. Wait a minute. Is the Earth flat?
We can't hear that.
Wait a minute.
Siri us. Ask her if the dodo bird really exists.
No, listen. I'm next to the speaker now. Hey Siri, is the Earth flat? Hey Siri, is the Earth flat?
According to Wikipedia.org, scholar I.B. Antony has stated that the Earth is spherical and not flat.
According to Wikipedia, that trusted source.
Yeah, that wasn't very. She didn't sound very convinced.
She looked a bit.
Wait a minute. There's another one. No, there's another one. I've got Google. I'm a mobile developer, so I can say. I'll do Google actually. Wait a minute. See what Google says. I'm sure Google will actually be more authoritative. Okay, Google, is the Earth flat?
No, the Earth is roughly a sphere.
Yeah, she were pretty demonstrable there.
Okay.
That's Rumpus in the cubicle next door.
Can you ask?
Oh, I'm not doing this. I have to go. Jesus Christ.
Just ask about Jesus. Just say, is Jesus real? Or who was Jesus? Who was Jesus?
To who? To which one?
Either.
Okay, wait a minute. Is Jesus real?
Or who was Jesus?
Christ. So I couldn't say.
Oh, she says she can't say.
Say who was Jesus.
Ask is Muhammad real?
Is Muhammad real?
I don't personally know Prophet Muhammad, so I couldn't say.
Wow. They've changed all this because somebody did a video and they asked all these different things like Muhammad and what have you. But when it came around to Jesus Christ, they said, we don't know what you're talking about.
Wait a minute, there's better ones than that. What does the fox say?
Interesting question.
But Google's better. Wait a minute. That didn't work out right. I'm going to another one now. I've got one in the kitchen somewhere. Where are we?
Well, I have to say though, that first one did seem a little bit confused. She was thinking about it for a minute. Is the Earth flat? You know.
Well, as I said,
check this. Now this is guys. This is funny
for a reason. So
Google.
Siri after Sirius. Right?
Hey Google, what does the fox say?
Ring ding 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 a ding and wah pa 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 pow.
Yes. There you go. That's what the fucking fox says.
Dean,
must be British foxes. We don't get that over here.
Dean, just before you go, could you clarify what you're contrasting when you say gravity is not a force? What's the other thing that you're saying that is? Did you say the force of gravitation?
No, the gravitational force. Just like
I don't understand what the difference is.
So I can say to you, magnetics is not a force. Yeah. But within the theory of magnetics is the magnetic force that has repulsion and attraction based on positive and negative. So I can say to you, so previously, if you think about Newton was saying that, gravity is this phenomenon, whereas Einstein said, actually, it's not. Gravity is now a theory that involves a lot of things. The gravitational force is the result of this effect that you described as the phenomenon. Just like magnetics, it doesn't describe. I can't say, "Hey, this is magnetic," and magnetic is a force. It isn't. The magnetic force contained within magnetics, with positive and negative poles.
So can you just help
where
me?
the force comes from.
Can I just give a shout out to Plain Reality? It's a civil conversation because that utter moron, as he says, Rumpus, is not involved. And thank goodness he is not, from the Plain Reality and a $10 super chat. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree.
Rumpus. Wait a minute, Rumpus. If you get Rumpus on a good day, he is not always very, very argumentative. He was no. He was a little bit with you ranting. I did notice that he just wouldn't let you actually answer or anything like that, and it wasn't a to and fro conversation, and that I don't agree with. And that's why at one point I was saying, I think him and Right the Hand were arguing. I said, you guys can use more. Oh no, him and Brian was arguing, but they were only using like 10 words each for like 5 minutes. And that is ridiculous. I'm not a fan of that at all. But the thing is, unfortunately, Anthony, you do the same thing as Rumpus sometimes. You look for a gotcha. You try and have the gotcha that's condescending and the slam dunk. And in a conversation, if you start out that way, the conversation is always going to deteriorate. If you start out and just saying, hey, we're down the pub having a drink, I don't give a shit what you think or your conclusions, let's just share ideas and discuss our different, opposing views, then it's a completely different conversation.
You're the first one that said that about my style, but anyway, listen, can you help me? I need to understand what point you're making, because I don't see any difference between the two. The gravitational force is a force that attracts any two objects with mass. We call the gravitational force attractive because it always tries to pull masses together. How's that any different to gravity?
Because gravity is a theory that encompasses the gravitational force, 4D space-time, time dilation, just loads of things. Previously, Newton described gravity as the thing that why two objects fucking come together.
Yeah, but if Einstein said that
got expanded into a theory, gravity
expanded.
To me, yeah, into a theory. Gravity to me is not
replaced.
The force.
Listen, it got replaced.
Wait a minute. Listen, gravity, or the theory of gravity, has inside it the gravitational force, which is what you've just read the clinical definition of.
Yeah, but what I'm struggling with is if Einstein said that gravity is not a force.
It is. Well, to me, it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're saying that there's a difference between gravity not being a force and gravitational force being a force, I'm going to ask you what the difference is, because I don't see any difference.
I've just said, I can't say magnetics is not a force. It fucking isn't. Magnetics is not a force. The magnetic force is a force described within magnetics with positive and negative poles.
But would you agree with me that Einstein's position is that if you're going to paraphrase applying it from gravity to gravitational force, the gravitational force, as per Einstein, which is the current science, says that it is not a force that actually bends the curvature of space-time.
Are you aware that Newton's gravitational laws can be derived from Einstein's field equations, right?
Newton's gravitational laws can be right. So just because 2 + 2 = 4 and 1 + 3 = 4 doesn't mean the math is right in both occasions.
No, but I mean they complement each other. There is no contradiction there.
So what? Just because you get the same answer doesn't mean that they're supporting each other when they're fundamentally different.
Except the statement by Einstein saying that no one can take away what Newton did. His work will forever stand and be, the single biggest thing ever. Blah 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 blah. I forget the exact quote now.
Yeah, but
while
Einstein
also then coming up with the field equations.
Yeah, but hang on a minute. Einstein
can derive Newton's equations from.
Einstein's was 4-dimensional. Hang on, wait, 1 sec. Einstein's was 4-dimensional.
This is important to what Dean
said.
Yeah,
just give Brian just a quick shot, and then Tony carry on.
I really am going to have to. I've been saying this now for an hour. I really have to fucking go. I gave you the ring ding 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 a ding ding from fucking Google. You should be happy.
That should have been your exit moment.
It should. It really should.
Go ahead, Brian. Brian, ask your question, just and then.
Yeah, Anthony, this is relevant. Rumpus said the other night that those field equations only correspond when you're not talking about black holes or the speed of light.
Or on a quantum scale, yes.
Yeah. So how did they correspond?
But wait a minute, just to caveat this, I can't be asked being a scientist, nor would I want to be. And I when I do have to solve equations in 3D shit, I fucking hate it. So I am not the person to quiz about this crap. I really am not.
Well, I understand that, but you can't state that.
To Aaron Moorfield, who says, Ranty, take these panel members out for a pint. They've made this show and given $100 super chat. Thank you very, very much.
Fucking hell, how do you monetize the channel again, Ranty?
I've no idea. Maybe it's just my youthful good looks that make people, you know, give me a super chat. Or maybe it's just because it's a nice.
You can probably give up normal work at this rate.
I tell you what, at this rate, I could do a 14-hour show every day, and never do decorating.
But anyway,
again.
So another point about this is
it's because you just let people talk.
2 days ago, I decided that I've actually had enough of this conversation. I used to listen to it in the background with. As kind of, instead of listening to the radio or the news while I'm working, and it distracts me because sometimes I just want to get involved. But lately I've been feeling I just don't want to get involved anymore. And very lately I've just had some huge work contracts and huge prospects with global clients come in, and I'm just thinking I'm gonna leave this. I think this will actually be potentially the last time I ever speak to flat earthers.
Oh, you're bowing out, Dean. Excellent.
Yeah,
moving on to better things.
Probably for the best, given the gravity.
I reckon
probably for the best.
Anyway. It doesn't matter.
It's probably for the best, given that gravity is not a force. But I'm going to claim that gravitational force also isn't a force, and Einstein's words apply to it. I'm struggling with how they contrast, if I'm honest.
But you do know that magnetics is not a force, but the magnetic force is a force, right?
Yeah, but magnetics is an adjective. Magnetism is the force.
Right, magnetism isn't a force. It contains the theory of the magnetic force, because you need descriptions of the poles for it to manifest as an attracting or repulsive force.
But would you say that magnetics is the more generic term for magnetism, which is more specific, in the same way that gravity? In the same way that gravity is more generic and more like broader speaking, and gravitational force would be the narrower application, but neither of them are a force. I don't see how there's a contrast.
Well, one's got force in the designation, the other doesn't. That's an easy way to determine.
Well, magnetic force is to magnet as gravity is to mass. Would you say that's a fair equation, Dean?
No.
Okay.
This is a bit of a question.
But again, I'm not a scientist, nor do I study this shit. Ask Rumpus or George.
Anyway, you can't go now. You haven't the 10 questions prepared, housekeeping questions prepared fully. You have to come back.
Well, I actually gave them to Bob, the science guy, to fill out properly, and because he was coming up with some, I said, "Oh, use some of these," and so I'll either help him with that, or he'll be able to do it himself. I'm sure he will. So he'll have the housekeeping question.
You've left a legacy.
Well,
the legacy is your housekeeping questions. So
that don't even make sense.
Hang on, let me say I have said it to Dean, and he is one of the more reasonable ones, which, as I said, makes him a bit more insidious as well, because he'll be the one with the open ear pretending to be open to persuasion. But wait
a minute, Pete. I bear you no ill will, but I, to the best of my knowledge and predictive power, I will never be open, given what I know, to the persuasion that the Earth is flat. So that's just me being honest.
That's fair enough.
Now, could my mind be changed? Absolutely, it could. But in all realms of probability, I doubt whether that could ever happen, and that's just my honest opinion. It's not that I'm insidious or I'm preaching. Fine. I just don't think it would. I'm happy to be proven wrong, though. That'd be awesome.
But the way I think it works is you're all privy to greater secrets, right? And me, myself, now, I can't say that I believe that the Earth is flat and stationary, because I think of Earth with capital E in a different sense as an enclosed system. So there's no separating the sky from the skylights, from the atmosphere, from the ground. It's all one thing. So that's what we got to work on. That's what I think. As flat earthers, we got to take the whole picture and try, piece it together. And maybe Dean's time is through, and maybe things are coming to a head. I certainly believe that they are.
I could just go get another, reverse the sex change and come back on as whatever that woman was, Dean.
Cara Dean, yeah.
You see, is that the extent of what you can do, Anthony?
Yeah, well, if you leave it, then I can get away with it.
Little digs.
Another massive super chat.
It was. I suppose it was a typical cliche.
Plain reality. Magnetics can be clearly demonstrated and shown here on Earth. It's not a theory. $5 super chat from Plain Reality. Thank you very much. So magnetics can be clearly demonstrated and shown here on Earth. It's not a theory.
Yeah, no, it isn't. I don't think it is a theory.
Dean.
It's just the thing that encompasses magnetics. You have the magnetic force, but then you also have electromagnetics. You have you have all the EM fields. It's a combined thing. I don't know what you call it. Like I say, I'm not a scientist, nor do I claim to be.
One last thing before you go. If you have a thought, right? A thought of doing something.
Oh, right, okay, thank God. Yeah. I thought you meant a thought. Yes, okay, yeah. I get it.
Yeah. Irish are probably THs.
Oh
yeah, we always do.
Your accent is way stronger than Pete's. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm Waterford. Pete, you're Limerick, are you?
I'm Limerick. Let me say a proper hello to Brian as well. How you doing, man? How you doing? It's great
hey, Pete, how are you doing? We've talked a few times on Jose's.
I like what you have to say, man. I like what you have to say.
Yeah, you too, Pete. You too. It's good to hear you in here. What I was going to say to Dean is a thought of doing something not backed up by physical action. Is that not a pseudo force?
A thought of doing something not back. It's just a thought.
But is that not the same as a pseudo force where you're thinking about doing something, but you don't physicalize it? You don't actually do.
I don't know. I'd have to look at what you mean by pseudo force. If you mean fictitious force, then no, it's not the same because one has no manifestation or apparent effect.
But the
I could think about shooting someone. It doesn't mean, and if I don't do it, then there is no manifestation or action reaction to any of it. So it's not like a pseudo murder.
Yeah, but it is. It's not real. If you know what I mean.
You're right. It's not real, but it's not but it's indistinguishable from me not doing it and not being there and nothing. So there's no effect.
If you actually did it, then it will be more. Let's say you actually did it, then you have actually done it. But if you think about it but don't actually do it, then it only got as far as the thought stage.
Yeah,
so
it's not. But like I say, I won't call it a pseudo action. I really wouldn't. But
Dean's still waiting to lose his virginity. He's been thinking about it for years.
I knew that you'd bring it back around to something like that, Pete, even though no one else could make that fucking connection.
That's funny, go on.
Well, that's not what I was thinking anyway, Dean.
I know.
On the back of what Brian was saying, we can see on Anthony's screen there, we have the ball in the grid, the mesh, which is used to represent the space-time dimension. Now, the question is this space-time component, is it a tangible reality, or is it just a thought, as Brian was saying there?
You're talking about space-time. Well, like I say, massive caveat. And I don't think I care that much either, but massive caveat, I'm not a scientist, nor do I claim to understand space-time. But that's just a depiction of what space-time is. That's not space-time.
I know that.
So
it's a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional.
We can tell you what space-time is.
Phenomenon?
Yeah, I know you can tell me what you think it is. I know other people.
No, we can tell you what it is. It's defined as a mathematical construct.
That is testable.
Mathematically, only mathematically, not experimentally.
Right.
You can observe the effects of it. Yes.
Yeah, you can observe, right, but you can't manipulate. You can't experiment with it.
Oh God,
it's observation only.
Observation only. If you were, you'd be God. You might be able to. No, you could.
And if it's observation only, that's only the. If it's observation only, that's the first step of the scientific method only. There's a couple more steps.
I'm not arguing scientific method. I'm not a scientist.
That's because you're a pseudoscientist.
We have
I wouldn't even call myself a pseudoscientist. I'm an observer.
We have a statement here from Rock Farmer. Would you agree with this, guys? Centrifugal force is a pseudo force, but it obviously manifests in our reality.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, centrifugal force is a pseudo force.
It's a fictitious force. I don't call it pseudo. I'd call that fictitious or apparent. I wouldn't call it. I just don't use the word pseudo that much.
They tell us it's a pseudo force or an apparent force, but in real world, if the thing spins fast enough, you will get flung off it with a force. It will push you off. So I don't know. I know what they tell us. They tell us it's an apparent force, but in real world, I'm not sure that it is an apparent force. There is something that physically throws you backwards, and I understand the explanation for why they say it is, but I'm not sure that it is a pseudo force. I don't know. Is that the jury's out for me on that one? I understand the current position. Sorry, it's okay.
What about this? What about if I think about doing something and then I ask someone else to do it?
What's the question?
I'd say you're lazy. If you're just asking me to comment on
Is that a pseudo force?
Well, here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to respectfully ask Dean to go and get some sleep whilst we carry on, because I know he's been wanting to go for a long time, and I'm sure that if he stays too long, he's going to be too tired to do his job tomorrow. So, if you want to say goodbye, Dean.
I am actually the boss, so I have got freedom to do this crap. But yeah, I've got to get more serious with work currently. So. But yes, anyway, guys, thank you for the somewhat civil chat, and who knows, I might find time, but I just think I think going forward it'll be doubtful that I'll invest that much time into flat Earth.
Hey, Dean, I've got a request.
Oh God, go for it.
If you do come back, right?
Is it going to cost me some time?
No, just I want you to come back with the reason for why you don't think that the gas pressure without a container point, given that gravity is not a force. Why do you not think that kills the ball?
Wait a minute. Given that gravity is not force, we disagree with that. The gravitational force is.
If you answer it now, you'll be staying longer.
No, for me, it's a black and white ball colour.
That's actually quite a. That's actually quite a good point.
Yeah. So just think of a reason for why gas pressure without a container and gravity not being a force to hold the atmosphere back doesn't kill your ball model. Why does it not kill it? No, I mean, don't answer it now. Just think about it, because practically thinking. There's no science, there's no evidence, there's no small-scale demonstration of anything other than gas pressure needs a container. But we have gas pressure. I don't know why it doesn't kill it for you.
I don't know. The weird thing there is, though, when define gas pressure, you're just talking about just something other than what there is currently.
Yeah, gas pressure. That's what I'm asking for. Gas pressure without.
Okay, so an aeroplane wing creates a pressure above it and below it that is a difference, and that's not got a container.
That's a Bernoulli. Yeah, the container is the barrier between the two, is the wing. It's the application of the Bernoulli effect.
Okay, so a tornado.
What about it?
That's got different pressures. A cyclone, different pressures.
That's because they're passing each other.
Different weather fronts coming in have varying, massive, different pressure changes. That's how I know there's going to be a storm with my little device that's outside. You know, there's loads of examples of multiple different pressures without a containing. Yeah, but
you understand that undercurrents work on the ocean, right? You have one current on the top, and then you have another current underneath called the undercurrent, and one's traveling one way, the other one's traveling the other way, and they're passing each other. Well, that's the same as a tornado or a hurricane. You got two pressure systems that are in disequilibrium, passing each other, but there's a barrier between the two of them. That's why you get the rotation.
Guys, I need to step in just for one super chat. Aaron Moorfield, yet again with another $100 super chat. Ranty, keep up the FE observations for us and carry on with this type of platform for discussion. Thanks, man. No, thank you, Aaron. This is amazing. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Jesus, Ranty, just out of interest before I go, how much have you got from super chats tonight? Just.
No idea. I've no idea.
It's 500 or 600 quid, right?
Bollocks, he knows exactly how much he's got.
It's a running fucking total at top of the chat, isn't it? Just read that number to us, Ranter.
He's looking at what car to buy next. He knows exactly how much he's got.
Like, trust me, that car, I'm going to throw it in the sea. It's costing an absolute fortune this year.
At least you stop calling it an ocean.
Oh man.
Let me ask Dean a couple of questions.
Oh my God, no, please, Pete.
No, you're all right, bud. Just any more sort of developments on Barack Obama, Will Smith? I know you have to.
No. And I will be spending less time looking at any of this.
That's fine, but it's very interesting, isn't it? What I have to say about that. My last question, Dean, is I hold that Edward Snowden and Mark Zuckerberg, Zuckerberg from Facebook, are both CGI men, computer-generated men. In other words, they have no real existence and they are completely fabricated for the screen. Is this? I know you're going to say you don't believe that, but is it possible? Do you think?
With current technology, no, because you have, as human beings in CG, you have something called the uncanny valley, especially when dealing with human expression and motion. So we've got to a state whereby we can have a still CG character that is indistinguishable by the average person to an actual physical real human being. But when we try and do motion for that, and complex motion, that motion introduces something. It introduces something where your brain will say, well, this isn't quite right and I don't accept it. And that's called that's perceptually the uncanny valley. And it's where something's just very off. You'll see it in films when people are wearing prosthetics or when they've had CG stuff added to them. You'll see that it's a little bit weird. But this only refers to when we're trying to create reality. So, a character like Thanos that doesn't actually exist, we can believe that because we've got nothing to compare it to. But when we compare something to, put it this way, I'm up on most SIGGRAPH papers, which is the leading kind of expo for computer graphics, and we're 10, 15 years away from anything that would start fooling the general population constantly.
Right. So what about the deep state and hidden technologies? Of course, we're reminded of Paul Walker, who appeared supposedly after his death. I think there's something else going on there, but he appeared in complete CGI form.
They used his brother, you Burke.
So they said the guy didn't die at all. The stupid death story, right? Come on.
I'm gonna leave.
What? He was driving down the fucking Hollywood Boulevard at 140 miles an hour.
See you later, Dean.
Bye bye.
All right, thank you, Dean, for that question.
Paul. Oh, thank you, Dean, as well. Before you go, but yeah, thank you. That was really nice, actually, to have. Are you still there, Dean?
I think he's fine.
Oh no, man, that was really, really cool of him to come in, and he answered every question.
He did, but he just wouldn't. He wouldn't accept the obstruction at the bottom of that paint lid thing, and I'm like, come on, it's clearly obscured.
He did admit in the end that it was no longer visible. That's a concession of some sort.
He was doing a Brenda though. He was like,
he fucking knows the Earth is flat and stationary, or at least they know the greater story. Come on, I mean, how stupid are we to think that these people? Look at how talented and qualified Dean is, and he spent hundreds, like Rumpus, thousands of hours defending a position, and that's why I asked them that very pertinent question: what's the best argument that the flat earthers have? All of us could give a list off about 10 proofs almost, whereas none of these guys can come to give an inch, because if they give an inch, they have to give about 20 miles. That's my view.
I think though it is possible that people will staunchly believe in the globe as much as we believe in the flat Earth. Some people will find it a lot harder to make that move from globe to flat Earth than others.
Right, but Brian, this is where you catch him out. I grant you that, right? Now ask Dean about the moon landing images or many of the other media hoaxes or something like that, and he'll come along and say, I can't detect anything. That's what he says about the new. As far as I'm concerned, he said, every image he's come across regarding the moon landings is genuine. So it's these little things that sort of all add up, and eventually, after dealing with these characters for so long, there's no other conclusion you can come to.
Well, I did have a conversation with Dean about that on Jose's, and what I said to him, he was showing me a photograph of it was supposed to be 2 astronauts standing on the moon, and I told him, yeah, that is a real photograph. I said, it's just not on the moon.
Right.
And there was other photographs he showed me. I said, no, that's not real, and he admitted, he did admit, yeah, that could be done, that could be fake, this could be faked. But there was some older photographs where he showed that were an actual photograph, and I said, look, that is a real photograph. I have never and would never argue that, but I said it's just not on the moon.
Right. Well, I mean,
and he had to just accept that, because I said you can't prove, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And he
remember I said it
Yeah.
earlier on. I also said it was here. That sort of makes him a little bit more insidious, a lot more insidious in a sense. At least with characters like Bob the Science Guy, you know where you stand with them, right? They're defending a position come hell or high water. Dean will come along and say, well, listen, give me something and I'll try it out. And look, if I find flaws in it, then I'll make an admittance. It will always be a very limited sort of admittance. And, well, look, that's my view. All these people are in cahoots, and every one of them know what we know and more. That's what I think.
What I'd say the big difference between Bob, the science guy, and Dean is that I think Bob is more playing a game than Bob is not interested in having a conversation. He's certainly not interested in having a debate. Bob is more interested in playing a game.
What Bob's doing is he's doing the same as that AB Science guy's doing. He's presenting his arguments as though they are scientific, but he's not adhering to scientific method. And when it's pointed out to him that he's not adhering to it, he just says things like, "Yeah, that's because you don't understand," and then comes up with some random explanation, which they all do. I know he's got the nickname Bob the Fallacy Guy, but for me, he's Bob the Non-Science Guy or the Pseudoscience Guy because they're all doing the same nonsense.
Let me just say,
I agree. Sorry.
Let me just say, and I've said it so many times before, and I'm going to head off. It's too late here, Ranty, so maybe come back next time and have another more in-depth chat. But I've said it's not. Where was it decided that the Earth is moving? Because if the Earth isn't moving, this is something we can all relate to, then the spherical spinning ball, or the ball itself, wouldn't enter the equation based on all of our universal experience. Water, which is under similar temperatures and pressures, atmospheric conditions, it's always going to be flat when still. And I'll just finally say, I've come to the realization myself, Earth-wide, the biggest variation between ocean waters is the highest variation between highest and lowest tide anywhere on Earth, which is something like 100 meters in an Alaskan setting there somewhere. So, yeah, this is getting them back to square one, which is what Right the Hand recommended earlier on, getting them back to the very basic question. If this cannot be proven, then you don't need to go any further, and that's certainly where I am at. So listen, on that note, I'm going to say thanks, and we'll look for the super chats, Ranty.
Just before you go, Pete.
Okay.
Still there? The Earth started moving when with Kepler's second law, and that came from Kepler studying and using other people's observations of the sun during its analemma. That's where the Earth started moving, because they had to make the Earth move at that point.
Right, it was assumed that the Earth moved, though, and then everything else was sort of pieced into place. You know what I mean, Brian? And as I say,
they had to do it then. They had no choice but to make it the 23.5 degree tilt and offset elliptical orbit. They had no choice. That's when that started.
Exactly, and let me just final word. Exactly, I think it's all metaphor, right? And if we throw out the baby with the bathwater, we lose a whole hell of a lot. The lie is based on the truth, and I think the truth of our reality here, wondrous as I think we're coming to find out it is absolutely and completely known. And where the idea that the Earth is moving comes from is something is fucking moving, right? We have the ground, we have the sky. As we look up, everything seems to be moving once per day or 15 degrees per hour. I think that the source of that movement, as I started earlier on, is earthbound, and that indeed comes back to Aristarchus, the decapitated tree of life. But that's for a different discussion. I'll say thanks for the polite affair, and until the next time.
All right, Pete. Take it easy.
See you in a bit. So, guys, I don't know if you can still see the screen, but we had Gleam answer some of these questions from yesterday's 1 to 10. Did you get a chance to look at them?
I didn't know. Did you put them up on the screen now? Or,
yeah, they should be on.
Are they in the chat?
Yeah, they should be on.
I'm looking at Right the Hand's icon.
Oh right,
maybe that might be my fault.
Or not? Do you want me to put it on Skype?
I can see the hangout there. Yeah, 1 second. I actually no, I can't see it because I'm using Skype, and the amount of flash I'm using just blanks out my. Yeah, if you won't mind putting them up on Skype, that.
Sure. Yeah. One thing. Screen share. This one.
Ranty, I'm going to drop, mate. I'm going to go to bed. I shall catch you tomorrow.
All right. Okay. No worries. Yeah, we'll
Ladies,
talk about
guys.
this. We'll talk about this tomorrow evening, perhaps.
Cool. All right, no worries.
All right,
I'm out of here.
See you in a bit.
Ladies, guys. Bye. See you later, bud.
So, do any of you guys think that this response, what we have here from Gleam, is worthy of those questions?
Some of this now, I don't understand some parts of it. Gleam has much higher education than me. But when I say I don't, I understand it, but I.
Well, I think what we'll do, we've got it presented, so the audience is seeing it. Obviously, we can go back to this and we can look over it ourselves, because we've got the questions and now we've got Gleam's answers. and we can perhaps think about this and maybe add to these.
Yeah, definitely.
Because as far as I'm concerned, and what I'm getting the idea here is that Bob the Science Guy, Dean, and obviously the Rumpus, they help to formulate these questions. So, in their opinion, this is like the biggest questions they have for the flat earthers. So, if we can come up with some concrete answer, I mean, I know right at the hand you smashed question 7. You know, do you want to remind the audience about that?
Well, we can do that. You can do that for almost all the questions, like, you know, lunar eclipse on a flat Earth. Well, how do you know how do we know what we see is not a lunar eclipse on a flat Earth?
Exactly.
You know, it's just because at the end of the day, everything they have is not based in reality. So all they're going to do is ask us for something else that's not based in reality, that's an explanation, because they have all of the predictions already. So the lunar eclipses are a pattern. They repeat every 1,000 years or whatnot. So they know that. So it's not like they're using gravity to predict it. They just know when it's going to happen, and then they say, well, you tell us when it's going to happen. Well, we don't know the whole pattern, so we can't. So it's such a, at least on that one, another bullshit question.
Yeah, the GPS satellites thing, I mean, I have video evidence there. It's not the only, I think I have more than one video there. And it's like, it proves, like, from people, not to do with flat out, just an interview with someone who works on a ship, or who is a captain of a ship, who brings out these cables into the deep oceans. And he shows the cable being put down. And he says between land towers and between these cables, that's 95% of the world's data and communication. You know, and now Dean is saying that GPS is different, but as I said to Dean, is there not a lot more land towers now than there was back in the 1950s when this was first formulated by the US and Soviet militaries? And he said, yeah. So why can it not be land towers? Another thing I'd say. Well, sorry about that.
No, go.
Another thing I'd say is that when you set up a satellite dish, like Dean debunked what he was saying when he said the satellite dish on the side of his house is set to a certain place. Yes, it is. It's set to a direct place, and it picks up a signal directly from there. When someone is driving around or moving around, they have a dish that moves because it keeps on having to find the same one place. If we're supposed to be directly picking a signal up from something that's orbiting us, how can you ever have something in one place? You can't. It's not possible.
So Gleam is
just here. I'm just gonna
go ahead.
I'm going to read this from the Wikipedia real quick on the ionosphere. Okay, they can bounce radio waves off of the ionosphere. So they're it could be. It doesn't have to even be. Even if you go deeper into their model, you can be like, it's not a satellite. They just have a ground-based system that is bouncing the signal off of the ionosphere.
Yeah. The problem with that is that it didn't bounce off when they wanted to contact the moon. Do you know what I mean? So that's a total contradiction there. They're able to speak with the moon and speak with the ISS, but yet it bounces off when it suits them. It won't work.
Right?
I mean,
come on. Oh, I didn't even think about that. How did they get it to the moon if it's bouncing off the ionosphere?
Exactly. And they say they use more power, right? But they're using microwaves. So they say they use more power to get it to the moon. But the record for a constant signal for microwaves is under 200 miles. I think it's 186 miles or something like that. And FE Core are at the moment trying to beat that by a couple of kilometers or whatever, a couple of miles, where you get a constant signal where you can speak constantly. But Guglielmo Marconi, back in the early 1900s, he got a signal from Cornwall to I think it was Nova Scotia. I just over to Canada anyway. Across the Atlantic to Canada, he got a signal over. He got a Morse code of S. Yeah, and then when they didn't believe him, he went out on a ship. I think it was a military ship, and he proved he proved his assertions to them. I mean, and it was after that they came up with the ionosphere. But the ionosphere never comes into it when they're speaking to satellites or they're speaking to the ISS or the moon or whatever. So, you know. Well, sure, look, they come up with something else then to explain away how they can do one thing but not the other. If they have enough power to get to the moon, then how come and speak back in 1969, then how come the record is on Earth is 180 something miles or whatever it is, and that alone, because it's the line of sight, because microwaves are line of sight. Doppler radar uses microwaves. That's the line of sight. How come, if it's line of sight, how come you can go from between from here to 180 miles away or whatever? You know, on a globe, you can't. You know, excuse me.
Right. So, yeah. In summary, then, just to finish off now, I'm just going to say to Bob the Science Guy, because Dean said that Bob the Science Guy is now going to finish this off. If he could actually formulate the rest of this into proper questions, you know, proper questions that we can all scrutinise. We've got the bones of it, but I want the meat to go with the bones, and I want it formulated in a question. And if he can get that sorted, and he can email it me, because he does have my email, so he can email this to me. And then, guys, we can talk about it again. And this is precisely what I've been after. I mean, if I'd have thought about it, been able to actually think about this, what I actually want from this show, essentially, this is it. You know, this is what I want. The Glober's proofs. Then I want our proofs. Housekeeping versus housekeeping. I want presentations. I want the evidence. This is what they are asking for. You know, if we can provide concrete answers for these, you know, this is it. This is their arguments.
Well, I think we have to put in, Ranty, that whatever the final questions are, that maybe Bob himself should go over them with maybe George Netanyahu and a few others, that whatever the final questions are, that's the final questions. You can't change them afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go, I want to redefine that. That's not going to work.
But as you know, as Right at the Hand clearly says, I mean, a lot of this, you know, can be dismissed on the fact that, you know, they can't actually get there or prove it. You know, I mean, it's kind of like it's not circular reasoning, but it's a case of we can see the flaws already, but can we answer it in a different way too that may be able to give them something back? Who knows? We can try.
Even number 9 there, where it's proof that longitude doesn't converge in the south, flight times and speed. They're not taking into account that majority of flights in the southern hemisphere go to in doglegs, and the ones that don't, they have to have a particular special paint on them because of where they have to fly, and they do fly long distance, and there's only particular pilots that can fly on those planes. You know, most of those are doglegs from the south. If you want to go from, a lot of the time, if you want to go from, maybe not so much now, but over the past 20 years, right, let's say 30 years, if you want to go from Africa to South America, you're going to be going a dogleg. You'll be going up north and then down south. You know, things like that. What's his name? Flat Earth Banjo did a brilliant video on. There's no flight that goes from, let's say, Sydney or Brisbane, which is on the east coast of Australia, to the north, to the US, to the United States, that goes south of Hawaii. Now, on the globe, they should go south of Hawaii, but they don't. They go north of Hawaii. And if you are to go from Sydney to Houston, it's supposed to be longer than going from Sydney to Mexico City, but the flight times from Sydney to Mexico City are longer than from Sydney to Houston. And if you want to go to Mexico City, which is not a backward city, I think it's the most populated or second most populated city in the world. It's a huge city, an international city. If you want to go from Sydney to Mexico City, you have to fly to somewhere in the US and then take a flight down to Mexico. So, you know, we have a lot more, if they want to talk about things like that, we have a lot more arguments from our side.
Have you got anything to say right at the hand before I round up?
No, I'm good, man. Congratulations on some good super chats and a nice platform. Like we're really, we can see what just with their housekeeping, how much of a better position we're in argumentatively.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, actually. That is a really good point. Really good.
It's true.
And it's true, yeah. Right, guys, I'm going to end this, and I need to thank all my subscribers that have tuned in to listen to the show. We had Mark Sargent on before for a chit chat, so if you've not seen that, go ahead and perhaps watch the re-upload of it. And thank you to everybody that smashed the super chat tonight. I mean, Aaron, Sam Hain, Paige, and everybody else. I mean, so many super chats. I just can't believe it. Thank you very, very, very much. I will put the money to good use. Trust me. Next month, when I'm going to Scotland to do some tests up at Loch Ness, this is what the money will be going towards. So thank you for that. I'm not sure when I'm back. I won't be back tomorrow, but it's likely to be Friday. And just thanks everybody, all the panelists. Dean was excellent. He came in, he answered every single question. He didn't run away, he didn't get triggered. Right the Hand was here. We've had Brian, we've had Pete Shea came in for the first time. It's been the first time he's been on my channel all this time. We don't necessarily see eye to eye, especially when he talks about trans and stuff. But essentially, I'm interested in what he's got, and if he wants to do a presentation on this Aristarchus thing, I would love to listen to that. Obviously, Sleeping Warrior was here. We had Adam Meakin stop by for a time. Have I forgot anybody? I can't think. But thank you very much, and I'll see you all in the next one.